to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we'll be your tour guides today as we deep dive Jonas Åkerlund's 2018 music bio / horror thriller, Lords of Chaos.
Yeah, this movie is based on a book by the same name, but we're not going to talk about the book much because it's mostly a scandal rag and it's not super relevant.
Yeah, it's pretty trashy and salacious.
Yeah, it's just kind of a attention getter. I think the guy was really hoping that it would cause a scandal, and it did. But this movie, which we're going to focus on, was really the story of Øystein, also known as Euronymous Øystein Arseth, the founder of Mayhem, true Norwegian black metal. It's kind of a story of him and his band.
Based on truth, lies, and what really happened, is what they say.
Yeah, I wrote that in quotes because it's important to note that there's way less truth and there's way more lies and mythology in here than there is actual happenings.
Do you think so? Because the feeling I had throughout the movie is that it's demythologizing.
Well, that's what they tried to do, but I've read a lot of responses from the people in it, like Bard Ethan, also called Faust. You might notice throughout this, they all have like super necro evil sounding nicknames that they go by.
Yeah, like like he says in The Crow, jolly pirate nicknames.
Yeah, so they all have their jolly pirate nicknames. Anyway, these guys are, I can't find any of them that liked this movie.
Yeah.
And they're all alive except Øystein, and that's not a spoiler. I should also say, since this is a deep dive, this is not spoiler free.
Yeah. And I would say you've probably noticed already Dave doing this, and I do it too. I bounce back and forth between their given names and their metal names. Yeah. And you're just going to have to learn and keep up, I think.
Yeah, I'll try to use their metal names because just for continuity purpose, and I also think it's kind of cool to call it somebody Euronymous more than Øystein.
Yeah, Øystein's a good name, but yeah,
it's not bad.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, though, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I've been playing a lot of video games, a lot of World of Warcraft, which hopefully by the time this airs, I'll be well into the ruins of Anchorage. The gates of AQ have opened, and I've been loving it. Been playing a lot. My rogue is totally geared out. I'm almost best in slot for every slot.
Wow, we keep talking about Warcraft a lot. Like it just comes up again and again.
Oh, I play it a lot. So, and I should throw this out there. I only play Classic. So if you're listening and you want to play Classic, hit me up on Twitter and I'll get you a guild invite.
Oh, such a Warcraft hipster. Only play Classic.
I only play the original.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of games too. I talked about this a few episodes ago, playing Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, still playing that?
Yeah, I'm still playing that. I'm trying to, fit in more, where I can play. I haven't been on quarantine lockdown the way I was when I was playing Red Dead, so I could just put days and days into it. It's like here I'm grabbing an hour here and I'm grabbing an hour there.
Yeah, for sure.
And just sneaking around and murdering Mongols. I don't want to offend people of Mongolian descent, but I love going around and murdering Mongols. It's a lot of fun for me.
That's funny. You know what else I've been doing is I've been binge watching some reality TV.
Oh yeah, you've said that.
Yeah, I've been watching the show Ink Master, hosted by Dave Navarro. I got a couple tattoos recently, and I'm getting some more. I got a real roll going with my artist, and so I started watching that show, and I kind of like it.
I watched Miami Ink back in the day, and I did follow LA Ink for a little while when that spun off from it. But I pretty much gave up on the whole tattoo reality show a long ways back, and they seem pretty trashy to me.
Yeah, so that Miami Ink. and LA Ink. I didn't really watch those much, but those are mostly just focused on a shop and kind of the drama around the shop. Ink Master is like it's like the real world. They all go and live in a house together, a bunch of artists, and then they go and they do competitions where someone gets eliminated at the end of every episode. So it's a little bit different. There is a lot of drama between the people as they have personality clashes.
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of the show, especially the elimination challenges and whatnot, it's all about who can do an awesome tattoo, and they throw out different styles. Like, you have to do this. This is the this is the American traditional challenge. You have to do a perfect American traditional piece,
Yeah, there's an artist on there that I follow on Instagram, and I'm blanking on his actual name, as his IG handle is like Bad Case of Purpose, I think. He's a local guy from Portland.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that have been from Portland that have been on there.
Okay.
And I don't know all the contestants' names and all their Instagrams, but I will say I follow a lot of people, tattoo artists on Instagram, so they kind of blur together.
Yeah. Who are the other? You said David Navarro's the host. Who else is on there? Like, is Oliver Peck? He's one of the judges.
Him and Chris Nunez, who's out of Miami,
who was from Miami Ink.
Yeah, and Dave Navarro is the host. He does all the announcements, and he has kind of that big host voice and all that. Who knew that guy was actually had a radio voice? But he does. And Oliver Peck and Chris Nunez are judges. There's been some recent scandal with Oliver Peck.
Yeah, I've seen the old blackface pictures.
Yeah, where he's dressed up like a black guy playing basketball with a fro and brown face paint and stuff. That's pretty tasteless.
Don't do that, white people.
Yeah, it's dumb.
You're making us look. White people look bad enough. You don't need to help make us look bad. I think the wig could have been
fine. Like, if he wanted to do like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and he put on a headband and a wig and a Kareem jersey, we get it.
Yeah, you made the point there. I don't know why it's so hard for a certain kind of we'll call them a troll. It's hard for a certain kind of troll to stop before it gets offensive. They want to push the buttons. It's disappointing because Oliver Peck is an artist that I really admire his work.
For sure.
I walked by his tattoo shop one time and he was not in there. I looked in the window to creep on him.
Honestly, seeing some of his American traditional work has made me want to get an American traditional piece. And I don't have any American traditional on me. It's all kind of like Norse, pagan, Celtic, symbology, historical tattoos.
He's one of those people that elevated that style, and hopefully he can learn and reflect and stop being such a knucklehead.
I'm not a defender at all, but I respect his response, which was that he didn't want his scandal to take away from the show, so he immediately resigned, and he said he used poor judgment and he wouldn't do it again. So I guess that's all you can ask for at this point.
Yeah.
So he did the right thing.
What would you do if you got a traditional piece? What would it...
Well,
what's the thought?
Yeah, it wouldn't be near my other stuff, so it wouldn't be on my arms. I was thinking on my thigh, maybe, or something like that. You wouldn't see it that often, but I do wear shorts more and more. But I was thinking of just a classic, like a skull dagger snake, or
like a Death Eater.
Yeah, pretty much an American traditional. They don't have the. It's sort of like that, I guess. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that. But I also considered the, what's it called? Like the Battle Royale tattoo. That's a snake, a dragon, and an eagle in a 3-way battle. It's a very classic American traditional design.
Interesting.
That's really cool. But you need a big spot for it.
Yeah. I think of Oliver Peck, there's a tattoo he did of like a 2-headed rooster. That's like the first thing I think of when I think of Oliver Peck, because it's just this is weird because I'm a vegetarian and an animal lover, but cockfighting roosters I think are really majestic looking, and I think they make really cool tattoos.
You know what would be pretty cool is a 3-eyed raven in American traditional.
That would be dope.
Yeah, it'd be very nerdy and very, very cool for that style. They could really pull it off. You'd have to find someone who's really good at American traditional. I think your artist does it, right?
Yeah. Shouts to Jeremy Marstad he's at the same shop that you go to. Was that Hopeless?
Yeah, I go to Hopeless Inc. in Vancouver, Washington, and my artist is Ken Nelson.
Yeah. So just swing if you're in the Portland metro. Look perhaps north of the river at Hopeless Inc.
Yeah, they've got top tier artists in the area, and a lot of people choose to go just north of the border for tax purposes and certification purposes. So don't think they went to a burb because they couldn't handle it in downtown. It's just because they couldn't handle a 10% income tax.
Right.
I mean, that's my explanation of it.
Yeah. You know, I've been rewatching a show on HBO Max. You probably got HBO Max because you already subscribed to HBO, right?
I think yeah. We do it through Amazon though.
Oh, then that's like Amazon's the only way you can subscribe to HBO that you didn't automatically get updated to HBO Max.
Interesting.
But anyways, I started rewatching The Boondocks.
Oh, I never even started watching The Boondocks.
Oh God, it's so good, and it holds up so well, and like politically and socially, there's stuff it was saying then it's still true now, but just rings even more true.
I like it when shows are like that. I think that you can watch some stuff on The Simpsons does that, and I think there's other animated things, like sometimes South Park also holds up really well because they're very political.
Yeah. So it's if you don't know what The Boondocks is, it's like a American anime style cartoon that used to be on Adult Swim, and it's based on the comic strip The Boondocks by Aaron Magruder. And Magruder was involved heavily in the first 3 seasons, I think. And then season 4 is, as I recall anyway, I haven't got that far in my rewatch, is sort of a debacle that he wasn't involved in.
Oh, that sucks.
But man, season 1 and 2, which is I'm kind of in the later part of season 2 right now, are just so good. And I was obsessed with that show as it was airing. I bought all the DVD box sets, and so it's been really cool to kind of go back to the early 2000s.
Yeah, you know, I often will watch stuff that you recommend. So I might check this one out. Although the last one you recommended that I tried out, Kim's Convenience.
That wasn't your speed?
No, it was like it was for someone else. I'm not going to say it wasn't a good show, but the jokes didn't land for me. I was like, oh, I never really had a hovercraft parent, or whatever you call it, a tiger mom. I didn't have that, so none of that stuff was funny. And I didn't really like the dad's. I don't know if the actor has that thick of an accent, and I don't really think that, like, I don't know what you call it, Kringrish, like linguistic fails. I don't think that is funny.
I think he most likely is doing an impression of his dad. You know, I think that's usually how those things, like Uncle Roger. Oh, yeah. You know, it's like they're doing impressions of their family members.
Uncle Roger's hilarious on YouTube.
Kim's Convenience. I didn't really expect you to watch it.
I watched like 3 or 4 episodes.
Oh, you got that far?
Yeah,
well, that's dedication.
Well,
I appreciate that.
I've tried a lot of things that I didn't love just for the sake of saying I tried it.
Yeah, it's like a modern TGIF sitcom.
It is.
It's but there's something about the Korean American experience or Korean Canadian in this case, that reminds me of my own family. And
that's odd.
And so I just like that show just really resonates with me, and I find it hilarious, and the in jokes sort of grow as the show goes on, and I loved it, but I know it is a straight up sitcom, and it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah, it wasn't my thing. I tend to like unscripted TV, but here we are talking for 15 minutes about things we've been streaming lately. How about this beer?
Oh yeah, our podcast fuel today is the Collapse Kolsch style ale from Wayfinder here in Portland, Oregon, and I love that they say Kolsch style ale, because Kolsch, like champagne
Yeah.
is only from the Cologne region of Germany.
And like Kobe beef, unless it's from Kobe, it's Wagyu.
It's Wagyu beef. So they did it correctly. They said it's a Kolsch style, not a Kolsch. They show you what kind of glassware you should be using. We're just drinking straight from the can like heathens. But, you know, if...
the art on this is really cool. It's got... like, sorry if I jumped the shark on that,
fine.
but it's this really cool back. It's got a back outline of fire in black, and then it has a foreground image of church spires. I think it's Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like an homage to those, to the collapsing superstructure of the Notre Dame Cathedral burning down. But obviously it's very on brand and on theme for Lords of Chaos, because they burned the hell out of some churches.
Yeah, as I looked around the beer mongers, beer store, I was looking for probably a CDA or a black IPA, whichever term you prefer. But then I saw those burning church spires, and I was like, oh, no, that's the one. That's the beer.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, it's a really good beer. I like Wayfinder. I never find fault with their beers every time I go there. I really like their tap room too. Like there's always good seating. It's got a good vibe. The food is good. So shout out to Wayfinder in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, Wayfinder is one of our favorites here. But I think we've talked long enough about that. Let's take a break and get ready to dive into Lords of Chaos. Welcome back, divers. When we were writing out our initial itinerary, what things we wanted to cover, we say in our tagline is that we cover subculture. And there was a lot of genre, a lot of sci-fi and comic booky stuff, but there wasn't
a lot more anime than I thought.
Yeah, and a lot more anime, but there wasn't a lot of like the punk and metal subculture stuff that we're into. And I was surprised that Dave had never seen the movie Lords of Chaos. What's your history with Lords of Chaos and black metal in general?
Black metal in general. Do we have time for a long deep dive?
Yeah, make it succinct.
Okay. Well, I got into black metal because our buddy Mike recommended 2 or 3 albums: Dissection, Emperor, and an Amorphous album. And you and I went down to Second Ave Records and I bought them. And they changed my musical outlook. I think I was probably 17 at the time.
Definitely.
And I think Nick's a little older, but he had a car. He had a good car. So we would always go to downtown Portland. Anyway, this is going to be a long story if I add that much detail. So anyway, as a teenager, I got into it, and that was in the mid 90s. So that was when black metal was pretty fresh. It wasn't old hat. And I've been into it ever since. I play in a black metal band. I've played in other metal bands. But how I relate to this novel, or I guess the book, Lords of Chaos, it's not a novel. It's trying to be journalism, I think. But I read it.
It's journalism in the way that Jerry Springer or Maury Povich were journalists.
Yeah, it's very yellow journalism. And so when I heard there was a book about the origins of black metal and other metal things, I got it and I started reading it. I went down to the Barnes and Noble, picked it up, and immediately just devoured it. Now, at the time, I didn't know that most of the stuff was fairly false. I knew that it was sensationalized just by reading it. You can tell. But over the years, I found out that a lot of the stories that he published as just like true facts were alternative facts. And I also didn't really enjoy the parts of the book that weren't about the original Norwegian scene. Like the actual book is based, the name Lords of Chaos is not about the Norwegian scene. It was about the Florida scene.
Yeah, I just refreshed on the book right before we talked about doing this podcast.
I refused to do that.
And the actual like part of the book that the movie is adapting is really like generously chapters 4 through 7.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pretty small portion of the book. The book goes through excruciating details kind of about any violent crime attached to extreme metal.
Yeah, that's kind of what the book Lords of Chaos is all about. It's just anytime there was a crime related to a metal band in any way throughout like the 80s and 90s, seemingly, he put it in the book. And he really does a lot of deep diving on bands that nobody even likes or has heard of. It was like a local band that put out no albums.
But
murdered some people
or did some arson. Yeah.
So they're not even really bands if you've never published any music. I mean, arguably. No, that's not true. I do think that bands that don't publish are still bands, but I definitely don't think that they warrant chapters in a book.
Yeah, especially when you're kind of setting yourselves up as the definitive document on a certain music scene.
Yeah. So the reason I didn't watch the movie when it came out in 2018 is because almost universally it was denounced and panned by the people who are being depicted in it. Obviously, Mayhem has not come out and panned it because they licensed their music for it, and clearly they had to make money off of this.
Yeah, and we'll maybe get into this a little bit later, but there's a scene when they're recording Mayhem's seminal album, De Mysteria Dom Satanis. And I believe Attila Caesar's son is playing himself in that scene.
Yeah, I think that's true. And when you hear the vocals, it sounds like Attila. Like, yeah. It's like, oh, they got that right.
Yeah. So this movie, and here's just my personal take on it, and I think you're probably going to be more elaborate about this, and that's good because I expect to be a little informed in this.
Well, I'll try.
My take on why the movie was so panned by the people in the scene and around it is it really reduces most of them to sort of like dick riding sycophants hanging around, orbiting around Euronymous and Varg. So if you're Isan or you're Fenris, people that are kind of titans in that scene and major cultural contributors.
The legitimately better musicians.
Yes, you're portrayed as a not even named on film bit part. Like you're represented by a glorified extra in the movie, and so of course they're going to be offended by that. But it really is. It's the story of Mayhem. Like, it's not the story of the black metal scene.
That's true. It took me a minute into the movie. It took me, I would say, half an hour to figure out, okay, this isn't Lords of Chaos. This is Euronymous. Yeah. This is the story of Euronymous. It begins with him. It ends with him. And that's what this movie is. It shouldn't have even been called Lords of Chaos.
It's marketing.
Yeah, because the book was already a hot topic of debate in the metal scene. They knew that they would have instantaneous discussion.
Yeah, and I think the other side of like the negativity that comes at it is like I said earlier, it demythologizes these people, these like superstars in this little world, and makes them into sort of basement dwelling teenagers.
Sure. And
I think it's having people's heroes kind of pushed off the pedestals. I think that's offensive to a certain kind of fan.
I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how I would have done this if I were the filmmaker. There are moments in the movie, and I have them kind of beat for beat because we're doing this in a chronological, where there are moments in the movie where I feel like the filmmaker intentionally makes someone look stupid. And I think that if I were making this movie, I would have done it in a fictionalized manner, much like this is fictionalized, but mine would have been, it would be a lot more dark. It would be a lot more grim. The extremism, because there was a lot of extremism, they were committing crimes, they were doing all sorts of bad things. That would be not done in a way that seemed to be attention whoring, but a lot more in the way that these guys are doing crazy things because they're unstable, which is sort of portrayed with Varg especially.
Yeah.
But I definitely would have made this a lot more dark, a little more arty, and a little less there would have been fewer chuckle moments.
I think have you ever seen Velvet Goldmine?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So if you're taking that sort of approach where it's a movie basically about the glam rock scene and in particular David Bowie and Iggy Pop, but you're not using David Bowie and Iggy Pop, so it gives you a lot more freedom to play with the story and be a little more mix things up and switch roles and however you need to tell the story. You could do that with a fictional band.
And even if they didn't do it with a fictional band, if they did it with Mayhem, and they just made the tone different. They just made this more grim, more raw, less I don't know. It just seemed like he really tried to demythologize these guys and make them into lame-o teenagers that you would scoff at.
Yeah, which I guess maybe that lands better for me than you, because I like that. The movie that I saw this compared to a lot was Trainspotting, which is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, and it reminds me, and it's like it follows the Trainspotting trajectory more or less, where you're kind of introduced to these sort of subculture kid rascals, and they get into dark, heavy stuff, and their lives fall apart. So I think it follows a really similar template to Trainspotting.
I can get behind that, and if I didn't actually care about this scene, it wouldn't bother me because I really like Trainspotting. But I really I do like this music, and I've gone to Norway. I went to the Fantasstave Church, the Recreation. I've seen most of these bands, pretty much all of them. Not Darkthrone, they're elusive.
They don't play.
Yeah. I was supposed to see Over this summer, but that got delayed till next summer. Anyway, I would have probably liked it better if it was a silly fictional thing, but they're talking about real people and musicians and artists that make grim, dark art.
Yeah.
And so making it a slapstick wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
It's a slapstick violent thing. I don't know how you would even, it's ultra violent.
Well, the movie it really walks kind of two paths. Like it's a music bio, and it's also a true crime horror thriller.
Yeah.
And I like that, because I think real life is not genre specific, and something like they're into these sort of gore movies and slasher films. That's a theme that kind of goes through the movie. And when the violence happens, it very much feels like a 1980s like horror movie. It doesn't, it changes tones on a dime. And I actually like that. I can see why certain people don't dig that, but it works for me.
So before we get into the chronological walkthrough, just overall, did you like it? Did you not like it?
Yes, I like this movie a lot.
Okay, I found myself in the middle. I hated it when I started, and I have little moments in here where I'm just like, holy shit, this is terrible. But then by the end of it, I was in it. I was a lot more invested, and I could see the director's vision. So I'm definitely not here to completely pan this movie, but I definitely don't think I liked it as much as you.
Okay, and so I think we're about ready to get into that chronological. but I do want to mention, you just said the director's vision. Jonas Åkerlund, one of the criticisms I saw of the movie was it was made by people that didn't know anything about black metal. Jonas Åkerlund was in Bathory. He was the bass player in that band. He knows black metal.
Yeah, I'm not going to say he doesn't know black metal. Definitely if you want to put a fine point on it, Bathory is proto black metal.
First wave.
It's like saying that Led Zeppelin is heavy metal. It's it's very much inspired the movement. But if you say, what is black metal, excuse me, and then you play a black metal song, like you play a Dissection song, you play a Darkthrone song, they sound nothing like Bathory. So
is Bathory Led Zeppelin or is Bathory Black Sabbath, though? Like, Bathory is a pretty important first wave band.
Sure. I mean, you can really parse it with like Bathory, Venom, and Hellhammer, and try to figure out what's what. But I definitely don't think that they are contemporaries at all of Mayhem or Emperor or Darkthrone. They're not contemporaries of the best black metal.
Do you so you use that terminology, you say that's proto black metal as opposed to first wave?
You could call it first wave, because most people call Emperor second wave.
Yeah. So and I was kind of all week long I've been sort of trying to listen to the classics. Just like those things. Death Crush is 87. So like basically from 87 to 92, 93, I dabbled a little bit. I stretched it out to get Dimmu Borgir and Cradle of Filth in there because I wanted to listen to their first albums. But I've been listening to those, the seminal true Norwegian black metal albums kind of all week long to get in that headspace.
I mostly have been listening just to Mayhem. And really, it's tough for me because my favorite Mayhem material was written by Rune Eriksson, who replaced Euronymous. So that makes me lame, I guess.
Yeah, I love Death Crush.
Death Crush is really good, and De Mysterious is really good.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy Rune Eriksson's guitar playing a lot. He's a lot more of a technical player, but that's just because I'm a guitarist. And so the music is definitely not as moody. Like, nothing is more moody than, like, Funeral Fog.
Yeah.
That song is just dark. I love it.
So, why don't we take another quick break, and then we're going to go beat by beat, excruciating detail.
Excruciating. Well, I will warn you that my notes are not excruciatingly detailed.
Oh, okay, neither are mine.
So perfect. All right, so let's do that.
All right, divers, let's get into this.
So this documentary, it's not a documentary.
Yeah,
it's a movie.
Docudrama at best.
But I wrote, this documentary opens like a bad documentary. It's got lame pictures that are kind of collaged through, and it has a crappy voiceover. And it turns out that's Rory Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's brother, doing Euronymous, who he plays Euronymous. He's doing a bad voiceover over lame pictures, and it's trying to set the stage, but the stage that they set is, I live in a lame place. I am lame. Everything is lame. This movie's gonna suck.
Wow, that is so different than how I take that. I guess I'm going to mention Train Spotting a lot. He's doing the Mark Renton narration, which is how the movie Train Spotting, how it's framed, and a lot how the book is framed also.
Does it start with a voiceover as well?
Yeah, I think it starts with him. He does his Choose Life monologue.
Okay, because every time there's a voiceover in this, I think to myself, they should have simply deleted this because it's basic storytelling. You need to show, not tell. And this is lazy. It's bad filmmaking. It's really bad writing that you have to simply tell me these things. You should be showing me. If you want to show me that Oystein's life is boring, show me a boring life. Don't have him say, my life is boring.
That's funny. Usually I agree with that. Like that's, if you were to ask me my opinion, do I think that's good storytelling? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say no. But, what my notes here say, I love these kids, is what my first notes are. I love Euronymous. I love Metallion. I love
I like Metallion the best.
Hellhammer. Like when we're getting the montage of their
Hellhammer's not in that.
Is he not there?
No, he Hellhammer gets introed to the band later after they fire Mannheim. I believe
No, because Hellhammer is. He's there for all this stuff. You start out. He's not there in the bedroom. Okay, no, I'm running it back through my head. He shows up a bit later.
Hellhammer, because remember the really terrible voiceover when Euronymous says, "And I have the best drummer in Norway."
Right, it's not Hellhammer.
Because Hellhammer isn't in there in the beginning. It's him and Necrobutcher, named Jorn.
Yeah.
It's basically him and Necrobutcher and Mannheim hanging out.
Right. You're right. It is Mannheim. I'm mistaken. I admit that.
No worries. But I like the guys, and I think the actors actually do pretty well. The funny thing I noticed immediately was the actor who plays Necrobutcher doesn't look like Necrobutcher at all. He looks like the real life Hellhammer, which is to say dark curly hair, kind of broad features, whereas the real life Necrobutcher has kind of a long nose and narrow face with like medium brown hair. The casting is way off, except for the Euronymous casting, which is good.
Yeah. And
the Varg casting, which we'll get to that when Varg enters, that's way, way, way off.
It is, but that guy does well. But
yeah, he's a good actor.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, but I found this a really effective intro to these kids, and I find the kids instantly relatable.
So did you come into this movie wanting to like it? Because I came into it not liking it, as in I intentionally had skipped it.
Yeah, no, I didn't come in necessarily wanting to like it. I came in with the understanding that a lot of people involved in the scene didn't like it. And so I was, my expectations were not high.
Okay. Well, the opening scene, and then when they're with that, I mean, I'm belaboring the voiceover and the pictures, and that's really like 1 minute of time. And then they jump to them in like Euronymous' bedroom, right?
Right. And they're playing, and he's
like, cut him, and he gives them a knife. And I just thought to myself, I was an edgy teenager who hung out with other lame guys. That's not how that is. That was just dumb. I don't think
I had friends like that.
Did you?
I really
stayed friends with them? Because that's lame behavior.
Not.
You hold down your friend and tell someone else to cut him.
But he wasn't really going to do it.
Okay.
Well, he actually. He might have actually done it, but
these guys were known for doing stupid things.
But he didn't do it. But
he didn't do it.
I was gonna say, because I don't want to miss this quote. When the first time you see them playing together, and Euronymous says, "And I came up with the new guitar sound that will change the world forever," and that is like, it's so hyperbolic and grandstanding, but not exactly untrue. Like,
he did play guitar differently than other people, but I really don't think that you can give him tremolo picking.
Like that he invented it?
Yeah, he definitely didn't invent it. He
also didn't invent black metal, but he says he did.
That's because this isn't him. This isn't Euronymous. This is this is literally 100% fiction because he's dead.
Right.
So they can have him say that stuff and no one can refute it, or everyone can refute it because he's not alive to say, yeah, I invented black metal.
But he wrote a lot, like on Mayhem Stationery. He typed out quite a bit of statements like the sort of statements he makes in the movie.
He was very self-aggrandizing. I'll definitely give you that. So I have a little bullet point here that says 5 minutes in, and I do several of these check-ins where I'm at a timestamp and then my thought.
Okay.
5 minutes in, this movie is shit.
I think that's your bias showing.
It was just kind of like the intro to the movie did not sell me that this was a movie about metal. This was not a horror movie. This was like a coming of age story.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not what this should have been. Like if I were the creative director, I definitely wouldn't have had this be a coming of age story. It would have been way more music biopic.
Yeah. Music biopics are boring. They're always the same.
I don't care.
There's not very many. There's not very many music biopics with the graphic violence and the sort of things that this movie has in it. And on some level, the comedy balances out the horror and keeps it from being just like the movie you keep talking about. I guess the grim
version of this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they do some decent. Record keeping of what happened. He moves out and he meets Dead via correspondence because he's looking for a vocalist. They're playing black metal in the basement and he's getting teased by his sister.
Dyeing his hair black and just like doing normal teenage metalhead stuff.
I dyed my hair black. It's the thing. But then he meets Dead and they move out to this country house.
Yeah, Dead mails him because they're
a dead mouse.
Yeah, nailed to a cross and a demo tape of his vocals.
Yeah, and that's pretty crazy. I mean, I have no doubt that happened. Dead was known for being extreme in all ways.
Yeah, and so we meet, as you say, Dead, played by Jack Kilmer.
That casting was on.
Oh yeah,
he looked just like the real guy.
Especially when they put on the corpse paint. There's several times where they recreate really famous pictures of the band. And Jack Kilmer, which that's Val Kilmer's kid, right?
I don't know.
I think so. He is spot on as Pella, aka Dead, and
and with Rory Culkin looking like Euronymous in everything but the eyes. I would say he has those Culkin eyes. But generally speaking, like when they recreate those photos where they're in their corpse paint with their leather jackets and bare chests and they take those pictures, those look like the originals. It was fairly painstaking.
And I'd say this is my favorite segment of the movie is once you get Euronymous and Dead together, it's a really fertile creative relationship as far as like music making.
Yeah,
they really work well together because Dead has nothing but weird creative energy and no ego.
That's true.
And Euronymous is all ego, and so they partner really well as like Dead inspires Euronymous and vice versa, and Euronymous gets to like stage manage the whole thing and do the Euronymous show. And I just really like both of them together, the chemistry they have.
See, I liked this section. It reminded me of other moments in music where creative people seclude themselves, like famously, there's a lot of stories of it, but the one that came to my mind was when David Gold of Woods of Ypres sequestered himself in this cabin in northern Ontario in the winter, and he just wrote an entire album while he was there. You know, this kind of thing is pretty cool. The only part I didn't like about that scene was just, it wasn't that it was bad storytelling, it was just I personally don't like they had a cat hanging from the rafters and they go hunting cats, and I don't like
Yeah.
I don't like that.
That's in my notes. I don't approve of killing cats.
I don't approve of killing cats. I don't approve of hunting people's pets. I think that's lame.
That is in the book, though. That is something that's accredited
I think that's
to Dead.
pretty much true.
Yeah, that he. What I have in my notes here is I have moving to nowhere Norway with these misanthropes was not a healthy move for Dead.
No, God, no.
He is, even though I think Mayhem, the band, is thriving in these conditions, Dead, Pelle, the man, or boy, is not thriving. He needs, he needs psychological
therapy,
attention.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he needs a supportive family, not these weird, crazy kids.
Yeah, and I think it's clear that Euronymous cares a lot about him, but he doesn't have the tools to be a supportive friend.
Yeah, it seems like Euronymous cares a lot about all of the Black Circle and all of his friends. He's really a social guy in this movie, and he makes that pretty clear that he really does care about people. And one of the things that I guess the glamorization and the dramatization that I didn't like that came up kind of in this early part was when he looks in the mirror and he says, "We are the Lords of Chaos." Mm-hmm. And I was just like,
it's on the nose.
That, first of all, that never happened. And that's not where the title of the book came from. It wasn't about the Norwegian kids. Mm-hmm. They never said that. And it was lame. And it was on the nose. And it was, it didn't land.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That is a little too much. Like it lampshades it just a little too much.
Yeah, it would be like if we were watching the Led Zeppelin one and you see like Robert Plant or an actor playing Robert Plant look at the camera and say, "I'm the sex god." Like it's like, okay, understood, but that was lame.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that. And then they have a raging party there.
Yeah, the party scene was crazy.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. So, okay, this is something comes up in the book that, it was in that Spin magazine article that I sent you.
Yeah, I read that.
They called this place they live the Black House. Mm-hmm. I love that it's just a shitty old farmhouse.
Yeah, it's just a garbage place.
It is not mysterious. It's not like Anton LaVey's Black House, which is literally like a brownstone that's painted black. It's just a crappy farmhouse where these metalheads live.
So when I was watching that party scene, it made me wonder if Jonas Åkerlund had ever been to a metal party.
Yeah.
Because it was like people were headbanging to no music. There were, there was just a lot of things that made me think that it felt really contrived, like the direction. It wasn't that metal parties aren't wild and crazy like that, or sometimes or whatever, but it made me think the directing was bad. He didn't tell the people what to do, so some things were not. There was like incongruity in the scenes.
Yeah,
like you'd have people in the same camera angle, like one group headbanging and the other group chilling, drinking beer.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't really make sense overall. And the idea that they wore corpse paint to their own party, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's lame if they did.
Well, it seemed like the way they portray it there, like this is their coming out. Sort of, it's their unveiling the corpse paint. It's a new edition.
Their quinceañera.
Yeah, they are.
Which is lame.
But it's just sort of like you're trying it on, right? Where they haven't done this before, and they're like, Dead has the idea. At least that's how it's presented. Dead has the idea to paint up,
sure.
And so they go out into the party with the corpse paint on just to see how this plays with the audience. I think, I hadn't thought about that stuff that you're saying about the party. We've been to like wild teenage parties, and we've also have the unique experience of we have been in a movie where we filmed a simulated party.
Yeah.
And this is obviously number 2. It's not the not the first one.
It didn't seem like a real party. And just sort of the dramatization that they had with those characters did not make me think, wow, those guys are cool. I thought, derp.
Yeah, no, but I don't know. It's kids. Kids are great, but kids are also lame. Like, so I just
true.
I feel like a lot of this,
Unless you're listening to this podcast, in which case you
yeah,
are
we
cool.
love you, kids. But
Hello, fellow youths.
how do you do? I just, that all rings very true to me. Like the posing and the just dumb belligerent stuff, like drinking too much and puking.
Sure,
and
we've all done that.
all that stuff. Just, I can think of really specific parties that it made me harken back to as a kid.
Okay. Well, we're not going to go through the history
Of parties?
Nick and Dave's parties, of which there were a lot. But
So
I guess the word that I would use to describe the entire party scene, just in a word, uninspired.
here's my takeaway from the party, and this was the benefit of watching it a second time. Varg is there. I
have that down too.
Yeah, I didn't.
He's one of the lamos on the side with no girl.
Yeah, he comes in and he bumps into Euronymous, and I think he makes him drop his beer or something. And I didn't know to be looking for that guy the first time I watched it. And so when I watched it again, it's like, oh shit, Varg is already like insinuating his way into this scene.
Sure, he drove 6 hours or whatever
To show up to this party uninvited.
Yeah. And so that kind of moves after the party. Actually, I think that the true Varg intro scene is later. It's after the show.
No, yeah, this is like the Varg foreshadowing.
Yeah, and then so after the party, the next major scene is when they have a live show, right?
Right. And it does this really effective thing, I thought, of like kind of cutting between the film and VHS recording of the band. And it looks like if you collected bootleg tapes in the 80s and 90s, it looks like the bootleg videos of performances of that era.
So this was the first scene in this movie where I said, all right, this is pretty good.
Okay.
Everything up until here, I was completely checked out. I was like, this is garbage. This is bad. And then when I saw them actually performing, I thought the actor who played Dead, Jack Kilmer, he was killer.
Oh yeah,
like he did a really good job, and I liked how Rory Culkin, he did encompass Euronymous' complete lack of stage presence. He really was a stand there and play guitar player.
Yeah.
I can't really, crap on that too much because I don't do a whole lot when I play live because I'm behind a microphone. I kind of can't run around. But Euronymous was not known as a frontman, which was why having Dead as a non-instrument playing frontman was important, and then later on Attila, because these guys were true frontmen. And then even in the history of Mayhem, after Attila, when Maniac took the reins, he was a true frontman, and then Attila's back again after that. And so I think that this show was good, and they had Mayhem's music playing, like, so these guys were pantomiming, and it was the real Mayhem recordings, which sounded good, and I enjoyed that.
So this is one of the first times we get some really gruesome violence.
Oh yeah, when Dead he pulls out a knife on stage
and
cuts himself like deep.
Yeah, and it's a very, like, we talked about in our Old Guard episode, I used the word gore porn. Yeah. This movie does gore porn a few times, and this is the first one. And
I had to look away a couple of times in this movie because I don't like that stuff.
But I think it's a really deliberate choice to emulate the things that influence them.
Sure, yeah, they love those movies, and they even had the severed pigs' heads on the stage. That's famous Mayhem, having animal heads on the stage. They just get them at a butcher shop or whatever, slaughterhouse. And then when he throws them out into the crowd and the people are like licking it and stuff, it's gross.
Yeah, that's an anecdote that's in the book Lords of Chaos that someone at that at that show, they always say gig because they're European.
Yeah.
At that gig, someone took a bite of one of the pig's heads and then got really sick because you shouldn't eat raw pork, dummy.
Yeah, come on now. Especially when it's been out all day and it's not refrigerated.
Yeah, that's so nasty. Do you think there was really that many people at those shows? Because that's shown as sort of like a packed club.
But it's a really small club.
Yeah, I just always had the impression that Mayhem was more niche than that.
I don't know. They have a lot of live bootleg recordings out there. And it seemed to me like it was kind of more like a punk rock scene in that they had a really strong core audience that would show up and
For
be
everything.
rowdy. Yeah, just like if I mean, we went to punk rock shows back in the day, there was always the same kids at everything. And I feel like that's probably what was happening in that early 90s metal scene in Scandinavia.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I think that in retrospect, they don't like to portray it this way, but I think there was a lot of overlap with the crust punk scene and the nascent black metal scene. Like there was a lot of sharing of venues and sharing of influences there.
Oh, for sure. Like crusty punks all love Bathory and Venom.
Yeah, and Hellhammer is super crusty.
Yeah.
Like I noticed Hellhammer, the guy, to disambiguate from Hellhammer, the band, is wearing a Blasphemy shirt. So that jumped out at me.
Oh, yeah. I noticed that too.
Blasphemy, if you don't know, listeners, Blasphemy is a first wave black metal band from Vancouver, British Columbia. So we get to kind of claim them in Cascadia as one of ours.
Yeah, they're old school Cascadian black metal.
Yeah, proto Cascadian
They sound nothing
black
like
metal.
modern Cascadian black metal. So I liked that scene. I thought it was cool. And then after the show, they go to the diner and they're like
The kebab shop.
Yeah.
Get some shawarma.
eating some food and whatnot, like you do after you.
Like the Avengers after saving New York, they go for shawarma.
That's funny. I mean, I've played a lot of shows. I've been to a lot of shows, and it's really common to just go get food afterwards. I'm always just ravenous after I've played live. So that just makes perfect sense to me as a musician. And then Varg is there and he's sitting all alone at a table off to the side. And, you know, like Euronymous is in his element. He's the king and he's got his court around him. He's got a girl and then there's all the other band members. And they're just really having a good time. They're not really grim at all. They're just having a good time.
Yeah. And so my note here is Euronymous. It's the first time Euronymous shows himself as a hypocrite.
Oh, yeah.
Because
he's not grim.
he always talks about how, you know, death metal people are just into drinking beer and eating food, and they should call it life metal, and we're about black metal. And here they are life metaling it up.
Oh, they life metal so hard.
Yeah, they're drinking beer and just partying and eating kebabs or whatever.
I like beer and kebabs.
Yeah, for real. And like you said, Varg has, or Christian, his name is Christian here.
Yeah, he hasn't changed his name yet. So this guy actually has 3 or 4 names throughout this movie, but he starts off as Christian. That's his actual given name from his family.
And he looks like a typical power metal dude, right? Like he's
got a lot of patches for a lot of cool bands, actually.
And mean old Euronymous, Christian goes over to tell him what a good show it was and to introduce himself. And Euronymous singles out his Scorpions patch and just points at it and then turns around.
Yeah, and you know, that does not ring true to me. I mean, maybe he was like that. Maybe he was just a complete dick. But I've been the guy who, after playing shows, people come up to me and tell me, you know, great show. They talk to me or whatever. I have never once been shitty to any of them. Because how do you be rude to someone who's literally praising you right there?
It is true to the way anecdotally that Euronymous is talked about in the Lords of Chaos book.
That he's a dick?
Well, that he you had to say, like, to get past the first wall to get in like to
To
where
be the Black Circle member.
yeah, like to be accepted by him, you kind of had to pass certain like taste tests.
You had to beat the poser test
Yeah, and
when he himself was a poser.
when he himself is a poser. But scorpions are, scorpions are great, but
Yeah, I like
scorpions were
scorpions.
too mainstream.
They were definitely mainstream life metal.
Yeah, they brought down the wall, man.
So I thought that the intro of Varg as a character into the story was suitably disheartening.
Yeah,
He was crushed, and he was treated like a lame fan who sucked. This is where I kind of diverge over into the real life Varg, who is still alive and has a very active Twitter account, which I'm not going to give out because he's a dick.
yeah. Let's take a pause. And Varg, especially the way he's portrayed in the movie, it can be a sympathetic character.
Yes, very much.
IRL, Varg Vikernes is a neo-Nazi, white supremacist, and we don't endorse any of that shit.
No, he's a complete asshole in real life, and he is a very sympathetic character in this movie.
Yeah.
You can understand what little boy Christian, how he became Varg or Count Grishnak.
Yeah.
The
Charles
racist
Manson of
jerk.
Norway, essentially.
Yeah, and I read his commentary on this movie for this podcast.
Has he watched it?
Yes, he has.
Oh, interesting.
And he hates it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because he says it's so inaccurate. He was not consulted at all. He said he would have consulted with them if they had asked, because he doesn't want himself to be portrayed inaccurately. And so one of the biggest concerns that he has is, first of all, that the actor that played him is non-European and non-Norse.
He's Jewish.
Yes, and he is very angry about that, being a white supremacist and an anti-Semite. They did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think that's on purpose. When I saw the name Cohen in the credits, I chuckle. I think, ha ha ha, they had a Jewish kid play Varg Vikernes, and that is beautiful.
And also physically, he does not match Varg's physicality. The actor Emery Cohen is like kind of a wide-shouldered kid who's I definitely wouldn't call him like fat or overweight, but he's definitely kind of a bulky guy.
He's got a bit of a baby face. And that, that translates to he's got a little chub in his cheeks. He has nude scenes in the movie, and he's not.
Yeah, he looks fine.
He's not heavy. He's actually pretty fit.
No, he's just kind of got wide shoulders, and he's more muscular than Varg. Varg was as a lad, and all the way up until in his mid 40s or whatever, in which now he's actually looks kind of like Emery Cohen. He was very skinny. He was a very narrow guy. He was wiry, you might say. And so Varg heavily criticizes the fat Jew that plays him. And I say that only as a quote, because Varg's an asshole. And I think that Emery Cohen actually acted his ass off. He might have been the best actor in this movie.
I like Culkin quite a bit.
Culkin did a great job, but he didn't convince me that he was Euronymous. There were moments in there when Cohen was playing Varg, when he's like in the churches and he had the burning intensity in his eyes. That was acting.
Yeah. Well, we're about to get to what I think is one of Culkin's strongest scenes, and that is we cut back from there
to the Black House.
And Dead deciding to live up to his name
and get dead.
Yeah. And I don't even know how to talk about this, because it's actually like it's one of the things in the movie. It's crushing. It's just really dark, and it's really sad because the guy was such a creative dynamo. Yeah, but he's this depressed kid, super isolated. Like this whole moving away from Sweden out to the middle of nowhere and isolating himself, and just being around extremely negative people was not a great life choice for him. And he's just sitting there alone at the farmhouse, and commit suicide very gruesomely.
Yeah, this is part of that whole gore porn that Nick was talking about, where I wasn't really sure what was going to happen in the scene, because Dead does a lot of weird things, like he buries his show clothes and then goes and digs them up later. And I was like, what's going on here?
And he huffs the dead crow.
Yeah, he's got a dead crow in a bag and he's like huffing the death. He's inhaling death. So I'm like, you never know what this guy is going to do. He's really unpredictable. He was a lord of chaos, you might say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he gets a big ass knife and he cuts his wrists down long ways, and then he cuts his own throat. And while he's bleeding on the bed, he shoots himself with a shotgun.
Yeah, and the whole thing, the answering machine clicks on as while he's still bleeding out, and it's just, I guess, taking longer than he expects.
And it's his dad.
And his dad calls to tell him. I had to, because it's hard to hear because the music gets louder here. But his dad's telling him basically that he got accepted into university.
Yeah.
And you have that feeling that if he had held out just a little bit longer, there might have been a light at the end of the tunnel for this kid.
Yeah, he might have had a lot different of a life, but instead, it was really sad. Obviously, he needed mental help, and it's sad that he died at that very young age. But the scene that followed, where Euronymous enters and finds him dead in the room, it's really crazy. Like he's like, what? And he's got like a lot of inner turmoil, like what to do, and he's really upset. He's very angry that Dad did this.
Yeah, he goes through just a range of emotions, and we revisit the scene later in the movie, and you see even more of his reaction play out. And then he does the thing, that we know this happened because the photos exist.
Yeah.
Before he calls the cops, he goes to the convenience store and buys a disposable camera and shoots a bunch of pictures of the crime scene.
The death scene.
Yeah, I guess. Crime scene's incorrect, but improper. He's always thinking thinking of the angle on it, thinking of how do we use this promotionally to sell the band.
Yeah, he says shortly after, when he's talking, there's a scene with him and Mannheim and it
is Hellhammer here.
It is Hellhammer.
Yeah, because Hellhammer has the van with Mayhem across the front of it.
Yeah, and he's talking to Necro Butcher, the bass player, and he's like, this is gonna make us famous. We're going he hands them a necklace which has a bone that has been copper wired onto like a leather lanyard. Hands it to them, and it's supposedly a piece of Dead's skull.
Yeah, and that's one of those legends in the story of Mayhem that gets told both ways.
Yeah, we don't know if he actually took some of the bones or if it was fake, because it seemed like the initial telling was that it was real, and then later on when it was said, okay, well, that's a crime, you can't do that, it's desecration of a corpse, then they're like, no, these were just fake, we never did that. And then other people are like, wink wink, nudge nudge.
Yeah, both stories are plausible. In the movie, they say it's chicken bone, ultimately. In that spin article that I sent you, Hellhammer says it was real, but that was back in '96, and
they're trying to get famous.
Yeah, and the events were a little closer. The spin was still happening, so we don't know. But either way, this is a bridge too far for Necro Butcher.
And I feel like that actor, the Necro Butcher actor, who I didn't write down his name, he didn't really do that good of a job acting, except for that scene. Yeah. Then he actually kind of awakens, and it's a rare moment of humanity, and he's basically like, no, that's fucked up. He was our friend. And they're like, I don't have friends, and you shouldn't either.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, listen to how evil you are when your best friend just killed himself.
Well, that's Oystein playing Euronymous, right? Yeah. And the Jonathan Barnwell was the guy that played Necro Butcher.
And I'm not trying to say that he didn't act well in the previous scenes, but he basically had no lines.
Yeah. No one really but Euronymous and Varg, they're the only focus of the movie. Everyone else is a supporting character.
And in that moment when he basically tells Euronymous, no, fuck this, I'm out. Or he doesn't say I'm out. He says, no, we can't do that. That's not cool. It's really good acting. And then, of course, Euronymous fires him. He says, we don't need you. You're replaceable.
Yeah.
And that's brutal. And he does replace him.
Yeah, and Hellhammer's not into it. Hellhammer doesn't want him to go.
Yeah, Hellhammer is like, no, that sucks. And then the part of that scene that kind of torques me, I guess, is when they have Necro Butcher riding away on like a blue granny bike, kind of wobbling in the grass. And I'm just like, how did that add to the scene? It literally just made the kid look silly as shit, and it didn't make this better.
So what I think, why you do that is to show that they are kids. They are, 22 or, thereabouts, which is legally, they're adults, but they really are children. Mentally, they're children. And having someone ride a bicycle like that tells you that it shows you that what a kid he is.
Sure. It really made the character look lame because he didn't even have a car to drive away his amp and bass and stuff. He literally left with nothing. That amp that was sitting on the ground that they were talking around, that was a bass amp.
Yeah.
And he just left.
Yeah. Well, the drummer has the van. That's the that's the situation because he has the most shit to haul.
That is usually true. Anyway, so I guess that scene was a rare glimmer of good acting that did not permeate this film, but that was good. And then it kind of moves to Euronymous opening a record store.
Yeah, we go to Helvete, the famous Helvete.
Yeah, which is now a bakery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the same building like you see people on Instagram or whatever.
Did you go there?
I did not go there because I knew it was not, it was just a bakery. Whatever.
I know, but you could get like a good, like...
grim picture in front of a place that's painted green.
No, I was going to say like a croissant. Or
yeah, that'd be good. I did have really good food in Norway.
Cream cheese Danish, where I think they just call it a pastry.
Yeah, I mean, I could have.
But you didn't.
And so anyway, they open this record store and they have a grand opening, and it's clear, it's pretty explicit that Oystein's father is paying for this place to be open. Yeah,
that's something. He lives off of mom and dad. Mom and dad were renting the farmhouse too.
Yeah.
You never see Oystein with a paying job. You know?
Running the record store is really just so he can be the king of the castle.
And, as the people in the scene, record stores like that are great. We need those spaces, especially then in the pre-internet days. We needed those spaces. But yeah, it is dad bankrolling this for him. But it is a pretty cool record store. Like, I'd shop there. Yeah, it looked pretty grim. I went to a record store in Norway that was kind of like that. It looked like that inside. It was all black. I can't even remember the name of it, but it was really cool. It reminded me of Another State of Mind in Portland. Like, that was... Yeah, that was cool. Its spiritual descendant or whatever in our world. And then they kind of introduce Varg again. Varg comes to the record store. Yes, and he's ditched his power metal jacket in favor of a plain black denim jacket with nothing on it. Can't get criticized. Yeah, and he comes in and starts waving his taste in everyone's face. Like, what a good record shopper he is.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, he talks to Euronymous, who says, like, there's good shit here. And he's like, what? And he goes, you have to find it.
Yeah, posers can't
A
find it.
poser won't find shit.
I have
Is his quote.
Yeah,
And
he
I'm
says,
just
I
like,
have stuff here you can't find anywhere else in the world.
not true. Unless it's stuff you made yourself. You
Yeah,
know, like-
literally limited release Death Like Silence records.
Yeah, and so that scene was kind of like poser on poser crime. And one thing that hit me, and I made note of it, was that Varg is depicted as almost slow in this scene. Like, he seemed really mentally deficient, and he was not quick-witted. He was very he was ponderous in his manner, which, despite the real Varg being a shitty human being, he's whip clever. That guy always has something to say.
So here's my alternate take on that. He's not slow. He's reading Euronymous and picking the right things out to insinuate himself in. He says things, sees how Euronymous reacts, and then adjusts his stance.
And then calculates.
Yeah.
It felt like this was Euronymous at his most poser in the movie.
Oh, it is. It's when he has the mustache, his Vlad Dracul droopy mustache, and he really is living it up as king of the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, they make a basement there that is only for members of the Black Circle.
Yeah,
meaning my friends only.
Yeah, just you cool guys,
just my buddies. So I liked the scene sort of, but to me it seemed really hammed up. And then he gives him Varg gives Euronymous a Burzum tape that he made.
Yeah. So
that he doesn't listen to.
Not
for a while.
Not immediately. He listens to it the next morning. But let's I want to like really shine the spotlight on what a dork Varg Vikernes is here. First of all, we skip over the fact that the band was originally called Uruk-hai, which is Tolkien Black Tongue, means orc folk or orc people or something.
Black orcs.
Burzum is also black speech.
Sure.
It means darkness. Both names of the band are in Orcish.
But do you think that Varg ever hid the ball on that? He's literally published his own fantasy role-playing game.
Right, but I think it's easy, especially for like American metalheads who are looking at it from a little bit from an outside perspective, to not get all the fantasy dork references.
Sure, they went full Led Zeppelin with the Tolkien worship.
Yeah, there's a Burzum song called "The Crying Orc." So I just want to he is a huge dork. Everything about this is dorky, but he gives them this Burzum demo tape. That's all him. He's recorded the whole thing himself, which is something that's going to continue with that band.
And as it turns out, it's really good.
Yeah, Euronymous and Faust both sleep there in the record store, because I guess you can't get your dad to rent your 2 spaces.
Why didn't they use the downstairs as a dwelling so the whole upstairs could be a professional looking
instead of
store?
sleeping in bunk beds behind the cash register?
Yeah, that's lame.
Yeah, but they're kids.
Yeah.
And so Euronymous wakes up and he has himself a pee in the work sink, which is classic, and puts on the old Walkman and decides to listen to this tape. And you'll find this too if you're a fan of black metal. If you listen to these early Burzum recordings, like, they're far and away better than the stuff that Mayhem was doing. Like technical quality wise.
There are some people who will argue that they don't like them for one reason or another, but I feel like the general consensus is that the early Burzum albums are some of the very best raw black metal albums put out.
Yeah. So Euronymous can't believe it. He hands the Walkman over to Faust, who's sleeping in the bottom bunk, and has him listen to it, and he strolls out in his underwear past like the Salvation Army lady who's
singing annoyingly as fuck
outside of his front door.
That part of the movie just annoyed me. I was like, why?
Because it's Norway. It's like, that's a touristy, wholesome. It's just showing like the juxtaposition of like their.
Do they really set up in front of random businesses without ever asking them?
No, probably not.
Okay. It was just annoying.
Sure.
Having an old lady singing.
It just shows you how in opposition to the society.
Yeah, they were
living.
trying to show that this is, like Salvation Army, a Christian group, and these guys are Satanists, and
yeah,
they're basically just well, I say Satanists, but they're really not. They're just idiots.
Yeah.
But they're in opposition to everything. But as Nick was saying, he stumbles across the road, one shoe on, and he's in his underwear. I'd have gone no shoe or both shoes there. But that's just me. And he finds Varg sleeping in his car.
Yeah, the drive back to Bergen was it was
6-hour drive, too much.
Yeah, he's gonna crash out there, and realistically, he's probably hoping for this.
Oh yeah. He I bet you that he would have gone back into the record store before leaving. He would have been like, I'm leaving, guys, later.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Did you listen to my tape?
Yeah,
It's really good. Yeah, it is really good.
But Oystein goes out there, says it's great, but I'm broke and I can't produce your record.
Yeah.
And Varg makes the decision right here. If you're going back, my mom will pay. And this becomes a sticking point between the two guys.
Yeah, he actually says, I'll pay for it. And
Yeah.
then later on, it comes up that it was his mother who gave him the money, but it's the same deal.
Yeah, but later he gets shitty about
money was the real reason they came into conflict.
Yeah, but here's where he makes the offer. I'll pay for it, and they're in business after that.
And then from then on, every time he sees Euronymous, he's like, where's my money?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you don't have it yet. We have to recoup costs. Blah, 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 blah. So this is another one of my timestamps. 40 minutes in, and I'm checking the time. Fuck, it's only 40 minutes in of a 2-hour movie. And I was like, God damn it, I'm not even halfway through this shit.
Wow, okay.
I was like, man, I want it to be done.
Really?
Yeah.
You're already bored of this.
I was bored of it, and I was tired of it, and I was like, I'd rather go watch some reality TV or play a video game.
I'd rather watch some reality TV is one of the. You would not put that on the poster. That's not going on the back of the Blu-ray.
No, not at
I'd
all.
rather watch some reality TV. Nick and Dave deep dive the metaverse.
It's definitely not a glowing review at 40 minutes.
Okay, I say we get some more. What I call Varg starts out Euronymous-ing Euronymous after this. Like after they do the Burzum recordings.
And people are like buzzing about it.
They are, and Varg, I want to point out, he's got really good aesthetic instincts for the band. Like he knows what he wants Burzum to sound like.
Yeah.
And he has a really clear vision. Like when they go into the recording studio, and it's a big, expensive recording studio that they should not be wasting his mom's money on. They should be recording somewhere else. But he goes, I want one mic in the middle of the room. And it's like such a punk rock, crusty aesthetic that he goes for there. And that's a clear vision that he has.
One thing they get right is when he's doing the vocals, he's screaming into a microphone on an old headset.
Yeah, like in an old set of headphones.
It's an old headset mic, and that's actually true. That's how he recorded the early on vocals, because he liked the tinny sound of that crappy microphone.
And Varg starts eclipsing Euronymous in like the scene, like when they're hanging out with people. He parrots back some of the things that Euronymous says, but he says it like with more conviction, and he's living it a little more than Euronymous is, because like they're hanging out at the pub and drinking and talking, and Varg says a bunch of the stuff about the death metal scene and how they should call it life metal. That's word for word things that Euronymous said. But Varg doesn't drink. Varg doesn't party. Like he he actually is living like a monastic black metal life. Well, Euronymous just talks about it.
Yeah, and he's a vegetarian because Hitler was a vegetarian, and he doesn't do any of those hedonistic things that at this point he hasn't engaged in hedonism. One of the things that really kind of made me feel like, man, the filmmaker does not like Varg is when they were doing the scene where the post drops off the package and it's the Burzum vinyl. And he opens it and he's looking at it, and Varg grabs one and he says, "It should be Spell of Destruction, not Black Spell of Destruction." And it's the most whiny, bitchy tone. And then Euronymous is like, "Yeah, I changed it." He's like, "Why?" He goes, "Because it's cooler with black."
Yeah.
And it just, I was like, man, fuck this. Euronymous is lame. It's cooler with black. And Varg is a whiny bitch about it. Why is it Black Spell of Destruction? But I would be pissed if someone changed, because I write the song titles by and large. If someone changed one of my song titles, I would not be happy.
It's Euronymous.
He's just flexing.
He's flexing, yeah. Because Varg has been flexing on him. You know, Varg's been taking his lines, and Euronymous, when they were in the pub, he says, my new album is almost ready. And Varg's like, "It's my album.
It's my band."
And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm recording it and I'm releasing it.
It's my record label."
Yeah. And then they have this scene in the basement with the girl, the photographer girl. And Varg gets in full villain mode and like has her undress in front of them, and it's really super uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was a really cringy scene.
And Euronymous looks so uncomfortable, and the girl looks kind of mortified and uncomfortable. And Sky Ferreira is the actress. I can't think of what the character's name is.
She's called Anne Merritt.
Yes. And it's the first time I wrote in my notes, it's the first time you see Varg being the villain. He's becoming Count Grishnak, which Grishnak also is an orc. It's another orc reference.
Yes.
You'd think, because it's well documented, I love orcs. I would love to like Varg more than I do, but he's horrible.
You like orcs, but you love orcish huts.
Yeah. Yeah. If this whole movie took place in Durotan's hut.
Yeah, we'd still be in that hut.
Yeah. But yeah, so Varg is becoming Count Grishnak, and he's getting groupies, and he's eclipsing Euronymous, and Euronymous flexes on him here by changing the song title of his song and like taking a bit of ownership over Varg's album.
Yeah, and kind of as this movement, this kind of middle section of the movie moves forward, they notice or they have Varg is ever increasing his rhetoric, and then finally it kind of culminates with him deciding he's going to burn down a church.
And he broad daylight walks up to a stave church.
And that was one of the things I noted mentally, and I was just like, holy shit, he took no precautions. He didn't sneak there in the night wearing a mask or anything like you would do if you're a criminal. He just walked up as himself. He left a trademark. He tossed down a rabbit's body in front of it. A dead rabbit,
yeah.
And he just walks in, breaks the door open with a crowbar, and burns it down.
Yep. And it seems crazy that he could walk up and do this in broad daylight. But as I understand it, before this arson and the rash of church burnings that kind of sweep Norway in result of this, these old churches really, like, there's not anyone there. They're not active.
Yeah, they're not
churches
being used.
So, in the off hours,
they're not even that big, believe it or not. I've been there, and the interesting thing about the stave churches is that they're all wood construction. There's no nails at all. Yeah. So it's all joinery and pins and things, and it's really beautiful, but they're not that huge.
No, they're like this. They're tall. They're super tall.
They're like longhouses. They're like the size of a house.
Yeah. Or like when
on the footprint.
When you see like when you're in any old country town, the old church house.
Yeah, it's just not that big. It doesn't blow you away with its footprint. It's not a cathedral.
Because it was maybe holding 100 worshipers when it was in use. Maybe.
And when he burned that thing down, it was very clear to me they burned shit for this movie.
Oh yeah,
that was not special effects.
It's probably a model though. It's not like a scale model and then forced perspective to give it this.
They definitely could have done that with some movie magic, but it was pretty crazy, and it was insane how bad of a criminal he was. And then it kind of goes into a montage after the church burning where it's just Burzum eclipsing mayhem, like in everything.
Yeah, and Varg, he's not shy about taking credit for burning the church. And we get one of the first moments of Hellhammer trying to not be an accessory to a felony, and this happens. It happens multiple times in the movie. By proximity, he is about to become an accessory, and he just like spins on his heel and walks off. Like, I don't want none of that.
Yeah, he just bounces. I think they discuss it a little bit in the book. Hellhammer wasn't super into these big crimes, but he was really into cocaine.
That's okay. So I think of Euronymous and Dead as Toki and Swiss-Gar from Metalocalypse.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so Hellhammer's Dr. Roxo.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's just from the book. I've never met Hellhammer, but yeah, for sure. The word on the street is that he loves the booger sugar.
He said a lot of terrible things in interviews, like really offensive, homophobic things. So I don't officially like him. I like him in the movie. Yeah. And I have to say, like, that picture of him in the Spin magazine with the sword and the bullet belt and everything made a big impression on me as a teenager. I thought that looks like a cool guy.
I'll go on record and say Hellhammer is not the best drummer from that scene. I don't even like his drumming because I feel like it's soulless and it's really mechanical. He doesn't have a groove. He doesn't have a pocket. He's not like Trim, who was drumming for Enslaved and then later drummed for Emperor after Faust went to jail. I think both Faust and Trim both significantly better drummers than Hellhammer.
Hellhammer does a very serviceable impression of Filthy Phil Taylor from Motorhead.
But with more double bass.
There's a lot of double bass in Motorhead.
He's faster than Filthy Phil.
Yeah.
He's younger and on coke.
Yeah. I think the cocaine carries between both guys.
Yeah, that's true. He's younger.
He's just younger. Yeah, just a little more virile.
Yeah, but really, I think that he's almost a bit part in this movie. He's almost like a joke as to how he's like the unwitting accomplice.
Yeah. He plays. I like the character, like as an extra or like as a tool to tell the story. I think the Hellhammer is like, nope, I'm out of here.
And he's been in like a million black metal projects from Norway. He'll like drum on anything. If you
the real Hellhammer.
Yeah, the real Hellhammer.
Yeah.
If you give him money, he'll just drum on things. He's very. It's like, oh, you want that thing I do?
Yeah. So as the competition between Euronymous and Varg is heating up, and Euronymous is getting sick of Oystein's shit and how he takes credit for everything but isn't really contributing.
Yeah, he keeps saying like, oh, I told him we should burn a church, and then he did it. I made him do it.
Yeah. So Varg calls his bluff, and he says, Oystein, we should burn one together.
And he's straight up about it. He's like, you're always saying that we should do all this stuff, but you never do. Mm-hmm. And then Oystein's like, okay. And he begrudgingly goes with him to a church burning.
Yeah. And Varg comes, pulls out the homemade explosives. Varg is already starting down the road of like militant extremist. Like,
he's very radicalized.
Yeah, and he's becoming like a Unabomber kind of guy. And he pulls out these explosives, sets a 1 minute on it, and has a little chat after the timer's already going. He's not having a ton of urgency about we need to get far away before this bomb blows up.
They definitely don't portray him as cautious or intellectual.
Yeah. No, it doesn't seem like this stuff is well planned out. He's very impulsive at this point. I think he sort of follows his pyromaniacal impulses and then makes up the reason later. But he does he gets into the history of that specific church and how it's built on a Norse, was it Hog, like a religious site.
It's he said he basically talks about how the Christians had intentionally built it over a holy site of their forefathers as an insult and as an erasure.
Yeah. And it's a political motivation is starting to form about what they're doing. It doesn't seem like it was there from the start, but he's starting to have a viewpoint, a philosophy that's going behind this stuff.
And so from the church burning, it kind of moves into a scene where you see Faust. The real guy's name is Bard Ethan. He's going into this bar, and it seems to me like an Oktoberfest bar. Like, it seems very
I think
cheesy. Like, why is he even there?
He's gone to his parents' house in Lillehammer.
Yeah.
And you get so it's probably like it's a holiday. Like, I'm guessing like around Christmas time.
Like National Day or something.
Yeah. There's it's not winter because there's not snow.
Mm-hmm.
I think winter because everyone's wearing these super cozy Norwegian sweaters everywhere, but that's because they're in Norway.
Yeah, they're so far north.
Yeah,
60 degrees.
Here we wear those sweaters exclusively at Christmas time, but they're just that's daily wear. But anyway, he goes to the local pub in Lillehammer, and Faust is going to do a hate crime.
Yeah, so he's there, he's drinking a beer, and he looks totally out of place. There's all these fairly happy people hanging out, and he's sitting there, long black hair, leather jacket, drinking his pint, and he makes eye contact with this older gentleman across the way, and then when he leaves, the older guy follows him.
Yeah, and so this is something that happened. The way it's described in the book is really... I find it really offensive. They constantly refer to this guy as the homosexual, and really dehumanize him, and it's pretty gross the way they handle it.
For sure. And I've read Faust's accounts after prison because he's out now. This really happened. He really did commit a hate crime, and he himself now is a lot more measured. He basically said, that man followed me out with the intention of having sex with me. He thought I was interested. I was not. I made the decision to kill him.
Yeah. That's not a reasonable decision.
No. You tell the guy, no, I'm not interested. And if he presses forward, you say, fuck no.
Yeah.
He's bigger than the other guy.
He
could have run away. He could have fought him. But the guy wasn't like assaulting him. He was just creeping on him.
And honestly, like the way this reads to me, the way they portray it in the movie, I feel like the Faust is still not being completely honest about this, because I don't think you really... It's uncommon. It's not impossible, but you don't usually end up in these places where people go cruising. Children of the internet, in the time before Grindr and things like this, people in the gay community would go cruising.
Maybe like specific hookup spots.
Yeah, there's specific spots that people would go to fool around in the woods and stuff. And the whole thing of Faust kind of seeing the guy at the bar and then going to the place... Like, it all reads very intentional and self-loathing.
Well, he did say, though, that after he went out, I mean, and it was fairly clear in the movie, and he had made the decision, I'm leading this guy off into the darkness.
Yeah.
That was clear. And it seemed to me like, okay, I'm leading him off into the darkness and I'm going to kill him. It very well could have been that he was sort of interested, then regretted his decisions. Regretted he had a little bit of self-loathing going on.
That's how it comes to me, is that this was a closeted person lashing out.
Sure.
And
it's not the story he tells.
It's not the story he tells, and it's not explicitly the story the movie tells, but it's how it looks to me.
It could be. It very well could be. And I think the guy, Bard, is he's a pretty thoughtful guy now. He's a middle-aged dude, and he doesn't repent for what he did, but he does definitely says he wouldn't do it again. Like he regrets it, but he said at the moment it was what I did, and I stand by my actions. It's kind of like a cop-out.
It is, and it's very like those sort of statements. As we get into like how the way the people in that scene mythologize themselves, like everyone, it really seems like they're always posing.
Yeah, he definitely at the time he tried to say like, look how badass I am. I murdered a guy. And then after the fact, when he was in legal trouble, he tried to say this guy was coming at me. He was going to assault me and I was defending myself. And then in the aftermath, he doesn't really like to talk about it much.
Yeah. Well, because he did a hate crime and that doesn't look good on you.
No, not at all. And I was just forced in my notes to mention how utterly shitty these criminals are. First of all, they're shitty human beings because the crimes they're committing are lame and antisocial and just wrong.
Yeah.
And then because I will say not all crimes are wrong, because if somebody outlaws the right thing, then doing the right thing is inherently illegal.
And the classic stealing bread to feed your family, like there you can be on the wrong side of the law and the right side of morality.
These guys are not. They never are.
No, they're not. And it's one of those things you have to come to terms with as a fan of black metal, extreme metal. A lot of discussion goes into the separating the art from the artist and all that, and it's something that I struggle with because punk rock treats things a lot more cut and dry.
Oh, they'll cancel the shit out of someone.
Yeah, and cancel culture, metal is reluctant to adopt cancel culture.
Well, it's weird because I have a lot of woke friends. I like to think I'm on that spectrum myself, but like some things seem to be verboten, like the HP Lovecraft Film Festival. That guy was such a racist bigot. He wrote poems, he wrote stories about that were so utterly flagrantly racist that it's not something you can deny that it was a product of the time. He's saying things like inferior races and calling out other people, other races, and he is garbage. But why is there still a film festival with his name on it? And why do people still wear his shirts, like with his freaking silhouette or his face and all that? The nerd community will not cancel that bigot. Why?
Because those books are good.
I mean, but Burzum's albums are great, and they've canceled the shit out of Varg.
Oh, but it's still on Spotify.
Ooh.
All the Burzum.
I don't do Spotify.
All the Burzum stuff is on Spotify, whereas like to do an equivalent from the punk rock scene, you're not going to find Screwdriver on Spotify.
Okay, none of that racist punk.
It had been on previously because it's easy to put your shit up on Spotify.
Sure.
But there was like a purging of white nationalist content from Spotify, and Burzum didn't get purged.
Where do they draw the line? Because Burzum's lyrics themselves are not generally racist. Don't quote me on that. I haven't read every single lyric.
And a lot's in Orcish.
A lot of it is fantasy, and a lot of it is really like in his modern stuff, he's like singing about like Odin and whatnot.
Yeah.
He's not talking about anything, and he always says he doesn't want to sully his music with other people. He wants it to just be about him and his views.
Right.
So maybe they were like, well, I guess you're allowed to sing about yourself and your fantasies, but you're not allowed to have straight up hate speech.
Which that could be where the line is, and maybe that's a reasonable line. I don't know.
That's probably reasonable, because if you start saying like we can't have people who are douchebags on this platform, where do you draw the douchebag line?
I know. This is all the things that we all wrestle with, and you, dear divers, you'll wrestle with it yourself. And you have to discover for yourself where the line is. Lovecraft, it's a tough one because I know all that stuff, but the mythology that he created is so influential and so interesting. But I was thinking, I think because probably we saw the same post on Instagram or something. The HP Lovecraft Festival is hawking T-shirts or something.
One of my friends posted about it recently, and I commented, and then previously one of my other friends also posted about the festival, and there's still statues of the guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's one of those things. It's easy. I think it's easier with Lovecraft as the guy himself is dead. So he's not putting out any new content, and you get to cherry pick what you celebrate about it. But there is a thing when you put his face on a T-shirt or a tattoo or whatever, or his name.
There's a big difference if you put a Cthulhu monster on your shirt or on your tattoo rather than his face.
Yes, I would agree with that, because I saw that shirt and I had the first, oh, that's cool, because this is kind of classic picture of him, and then the tentacles kind of underneath. And I thought, that's a cool T-shirt. And then I thought, I couldn't wear that because I couldn't in good conscience, even though I really enjoy those books, I couldn't in good conscience walk around with that guy's face on my chest.
Well, just like I like the Burzum albums, I won't put his patch on my jacket. I won't put, a Burzum sticker or anything. And I don't.
When I see someone with a Burzum patch, like, they're immediately on my Nazi suspect list.
Yeah, it seems like they're looking for a fight.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're going to get in Portland.
Yeah, and then you get into, well, actually, I just like these albums.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things.
I like his keyboard-only album with no lyrics.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, whatever, edgelord.
Yeah, just trying to be provocative.
Anyways.
So back to this movie. They're shitty people committing shitty crimes, and they're doing it poorly. They're not good at crimes.
No, the fact that these are dumb kids acting impulsively is reiterated.
Yeah, I was constantly like just slapping myself in the forehead, like, what?
And so
what the hell?
Faust comes back to Oslo, and there's a big concert, I think a Motorhead concert, and everyone's kind of meeting back up after the holidays. Is the impression I get from why they went home to mom and dad's. And Faust is like, yo, when I was in Lillehammer, I killed somebody.
Yeah, I did that, as they're seeing like the news and stuff.
Yeah, and Oystein starts spinning. How can we sell this?
How can we become famous?
And Varg starts spinning. How can I spin another arson out of this? We should celebrate and burn down another church.
Yeah, and the next one, that last church burning, or the one in this one in sequence, I don't know if there's another one, but I noted how beautiful the imagery was. It was filmed so well.
Yes. So there's a few things. This is where they get real. We start getting some symbolism that has not been in the movie up until this point. There's a point as the church is collapsing, when the timbers make that inverted peace sign rune. It's like the equivalent to letter Z in the alphabet. And it's on the cover of a Burzum album.
Yeah.
So there's a moment as the timbers are settling that the camera rests on
the rune,
on the rune shape in the timbers, and they're like smoldering there, or not. I mean, it's a conflagration. Like, it's not just smoldering. And then there's a raven witnessing them, which is, that's very symbolic. That's whenever something significant for Vikings is happening, a raven always comes and witnesses it.
So gotta go tell Odin.
Yeah, it's like in Marvel Comics when Uatu the Watcher shows up. The Fantastic Four is about to do some cosmic stuff. And so Odin's raven shows up to witness this church burning. And so I really had the impression they wanted us to think this one is very significant.
And it was the best filmed, it was the biggest, and it was the most interesting to look at.
And after this, Euronymous is losing control of the train.
There's a paranoia montage
Yeah.
where it's like cutting from scene to scene, and he's paranoia. It's kind of rapid. They're trying to give a frantic vibe, and he's doing a voiceover. It was really hard to watch for two reasons. One, yeah, it was kind of disturbing, but two, I hate voiceovers, and it sounded like crap.
You still hate the voiceover. It's just the narrative device of this movie.
It's just bad.
Okay. I thought this works, and I guess that's just our standard position on the voiceover.
Sure.
Euronymous, he's always spin doctoring everything, but he seems to be the only one of their group that realizes what level they've gone to. It's not just one arson now, it's multiple
It's a string
arsons.
of arsons.
And a murder. There's been a murder, and he apparently, I mean, we get the impression both from the movie and from the books that the Norwegian police aren't very effective detectives.
Not good at arson investigations.
Because these kids are not covering their tracks well. They get spotted at one of them, like I think either that one or the one before, and the cops don't catch them. And I guess maybe it makes sense in a kind of a low crime country like Norway. They don't have a robust militarized police force like we have in America.
Yeah.
But Euronymous is very aware that they are deep in dark shit, and it's going to catch up to them soon.
Yeah, and there's a scene kind of after the montage where he's sitting in front of his typewriter with his Mayhem stationery, and he's wearing full corpse paint, and he's just sitting there in his underwear and tube socks.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, what a fucking nerd.
This guy's lost it. That's I'm out of my mind behavior.
Maybe nerd's the worst. What a poser. Why has he got his own stationery, and why does he have corpse paint on to type?
Because he's an avid pen paler, and he runs a record store and a record label. And
it wasn't Helvet.
No, it's Mayhem stationery, but he has to do that for his press releases. Back in the olden days, that's how you did press releases. You typed them up and printing out in advanced stationery.
I seem to remember the 90s. I was there. They didn't all use typewriters.
That's true.
Printers were a thing.
You know, people would do this. I guess that maybe the typewriter is affectation.
And why did the director say, what I want you to be sitting there in your tube socks and underwear, and I want you to have corpse paint on typing this up? That was pure artistic direction from the director. That was not from the book. Why did he choose to paint Euronymous like that?
To me, that is just indicative of how the wheels are falling off the cart, like how he's losing it.
He's just saying, okay, let's show ridiculousness.
Yes.
Because we already told them a bunch.
His brain is spinning, and he's not acting in his right mind. I half
expected a voiceover. It's like, you can see by my ridiculous outfit and acting and actions that I was really not doing well.
So this Dave doesn't like voiceover, and that's going to become one of our new taglines.
Anytime I hear voiceover, I think, this director's bad. Gotcha.
So Euronymous is falling apart, but he finally does get his photo shoot. With Sky Ferreira's character. He's kind of asked her a few times to do a photo shoot of him, and she kind of just wasn't into it or whatever. But they finally do the photo shoot, and they finally hook up,
and they fucking nail those photos.
Yeah,
like they look exactly like the old Mayhem press photos. They obviously had very clear reference.
So, and this is just after the typewriter scene. So I think he put the corpse paint on without his shirt on to not get makeup on the shirt.
On the black shirt. Actually, he was wearing like a robe. He was wearing like a
how he got the clothes
robe
on after he did the corpse paint, probably immediately regretted doing the corpse paint before he got dressed.
The inside of my collar is all white, and I have to fix my corpse paint.
Yeah. So I think he just made a dumb move there. He thought, when I put on corpse paint, I always get it on my clothes. I'll do it in my underwear, and then I won't get it on.
Let me just kind of get meta, because that's what we do.
Uh-huh.
When I run Dungeons and Dragons games, I don't make you count your arrows. Right?
Right.
I never have said, Nick plays a monk, how many throwing darts do you have remaining in your sheath?
That's true.
Never have. Why? Because I feel like those kind of boring details detract from the story. It steals momentum. If I was constantly asking you how many days rations you had left,
I hate that stuff.
The story would just get bogged, and you'd be sitting there scratching out math, and you'd be like, how much does it cost? I'll buy some more. And then I'd be like, but what about your encumbrance? You can't carry all of those. So what I do as a storyteller, as a dungeon master, is I trim the fat and I try to make it good. Focus on the good shit. Okay. Ignore the lame shit. This director did not subscribe to my philosophy.
Okay. I think that's a fair criticism. I did not bump up against that scene. I mean, I think I laughed.
Sure.
But it didn't take me out of the movie, though. I found it in keeping with the story they were telling.
I mean, and I'm glad I liked the photo shoot scene, because same reason I liked the previous photo shoot scene at the party, because they're so accurate. I love that. I love the recreationism, but I also loved that they actually made Oystein seem like a real person in this scene.
Yeah.
Because afterwards, when he hooks up with Anne Merritt, he is he's like a real guy. He's real with her. He gets to actually be Oystein and not Euronymous.
Yeah, and the way they play it, because earlier in the movie he's always been kind of posturing with her, and he's very guard down from this moment on with her. And he sort of retracts himself from the Black Circle entirely and just starts living a kind of a normal life
he's
with
got
her.
An apartment.
He shut down the record store, and he starts sort of transitioning out of the old version of Euronymous, because
he's going to be a grown-up. Things
are getting too wild for him. But they have the scene where they're recording De Mysterious here, and Varg starts making proclamations about how they're going to burn down or blow up the largest cathedral in Norway. And this is another Hellhammer is like, nope, never mind.
Yeah,
and he walks off. He's like, I don't want to know about this.
We just glossed over it, but basically during the point in time when Burzum is eclipsing Mayhem, Mayhem still didn't have a bass player because they'd fired Necro Butcher. Euronymous decides to just make Varg his bass player so that he then owns him.
Yeah, it's a way of putting a leash on him.
And so that's why he's there. Varg is there at the recording sessions because he's playing bass, and he's talking about this insane plan. Like, he's got a newspaper, I think it's a newspaper. He's got a picture of the cathedral.
Yeah, that they're going to use supposedly for the cover of the album.
Yeah, he wants to get dynamite and blow it up.
Yeah, and Euronymous is like, that's crazy. We're not doing that. And that's when Hellhammer excuses himself, and Varg and Euronymous have their, like, you're not serious about this shit. I'm doing this as a call to action, and you need to get with the program. And Euronymous is like, it's just a band.
Yeah, and it's he's trying to explain, and there's actually a scene a little bit forward in the movie where it's just straight up. Varg is like, no, I was never a Satanist. It was just, it's marketing. I'm trying to sell albums.
Euronymous says that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Euronymous says that. I'm trying to create hype. I want people to believe that I'm evil so that they're intrigued and they want to buy my stuff. And Varg is like, no, I am evil. I am a villain. None of it is hype. It's all real. I believe it. You're a poser.
Yeah. And so we get that scene I talked about earlier where they're recording De Mysterious, and Attila's son comes in playing his dad and kills it.
Yeah.
And Varg, after he gets back to Bergen, and he makes the call, I'm going to go to the press and take credit for all this stuff.
Oh man, that press scene where Varg goes public, that was so hilarious how badly they mocked Varg.
Yeah, but it fits with the account of how that happened.
It does.
As far as what the reporter said and the pictures, like that article's real.
That is. And he's holding that stupid spiky knife in front of his face.
Yeah, with his hair in front of his eyes to obscure his identity.
And it doesn't at all.
The reporter, yeah, I wrote this down because I think it's such a good line, because Varg has set up the room as his evil lair.
Yeah, he's got like flags and he's got candles and skulls and things.
Yeah, and it's all over the place. He's got swords.
It's wall-to-wall garbage.
Swastikas, skulls, knives, candles, and he comes in and he's sitting there in the shadows with kind of a cloak draped around his shoulders and introduces himself as Griefy Grishnak.
And there's a couple of moments in there where the director made very clear directions that are meant to show the ridiculousness of it. Varg toys with the positioning of his arms. Do I cross him? Do I put him down by my side? Do I put my hands in my lap? He's like posing.
Yeah.
And then when the reporter and the photographer come in, they have to take off their shoes at the door.
Yeah, I like that.
It was like so mundane.
And it's so, we're at my mom's house.
Yeah. And then he's Griefy Grishnak.
Yeah, and the guy can't understand him because he's saying it low and scary. And finally he says, just call me the Count. Which becomes how he is referred to in the Norwegian media. After this.
They just call him the Count.
Yeah. And the reporter says, and I thought this was such a great line, he goes, so you believe in paganism? And you're a Satanist? And you're also a Nazi? That's a pretty broad belief system.
It's funny because I quoted that same line, and then I also quoted the photographer. What an idiot.
Yeah. He says, but that idiot's going to be on the front page tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because basically the photographer, or not the photographer, the reporter plays Varg's ego and just gets the kid to spill the beans, and Varg starts confessing to shit that he didn't even do.
Yeah.
And he throws Faust under the bus, who... That was an unsolved mystery that was never going to get solved.
Yeah, he's like, when the guy died in Lilyhammer, that was us.
Yeah, and essentially the cops had just dropped it because it was a gay guy got murdered and they didn't care. Yep. And it would have just gone away. Faust would have never gotten caught, except for Varg, for a little more criminal credibility, throws it out there. And ultimately that's good because he was held to account for his crimes, and he wouldn't have been otherwise. But as a bro move, it's bad.
Yeah, you can't turn in your bros for the crimes. I mean,
if your bro does a hate crime, please turn him in.
Yeah, true. Nick, don't do a hate crime.
I trust. I will turn you in, and you go on the record. You will turn me in if we ever do any hate crimes.
True that. If we commit crimes, they won't be hate related.
I won't turn you in.
No, I know us. If we did something, it would be out of desperation. We no hate about it. But so basically, after that, there's the Oystein or Euronymous does his Kerrang interview.
Oh, well,
did I miss a piece?
You missed the piece.
My notes are spotty in this point because I was checked out.
Euronymous is super pissed at Varg for doing this,
for stealing the spotlight,
and says, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to incapacitate him with my taser, take him out in the woods, and torture him and make a snuff film.
Make a snuff film out of it. Yeah.
And dumb old Faust.
Faust is the biggest idiot in this movie.
Oh, yeah. He looks at him like, oh, wow. I should probably warn him.
I should let him know.
So in my notes, it says, Euronymous shouldn't have said that to Faust.
Yeah.
Because Faust is like, I'm going to go tell Varg that Euronymous is going to shock him with his taser, take him in the woods, torture him, and make a snuff film.
And he did.
And he did. And so, but anyways,
Faust is a bad friend, by the way.
The Kerrang interview. Kerrang calls, and Kerrang is a pretty influential hard rock metal magazine from the UK.
Yeah. I remember as a teenager, I used to love going and getting Kerrang from the Barnes & Noble. It was always more expensive because it's British, but it was better.
It's an import, and it's a weekly magazine, and it's very current at all times.
Yeah.
And it's so current, they're covering this black metal stuff while it's going on, not 3 years later like Spin magazine.
Spin was bad at the time, and it's dead now.
I like those old Spin magazines, but I was a kid.
There's like a few options. It was like Alternative Press, Spin, Rolling Stone, Kerrang, Metal Maniacs.
Metal Hammer.
I liked Metal Maniacs.
But that Kerrang article ends up being very famous. And it kind of breaks the Norwegian black metal scene to the English-speaking world. This is from there. My notes go to Burzum breaks up with Death Like Silence.
Yeah, basically.
Because Euronymous takes credit for everything, speaking to the reporter.
Yeah, so Euronymous is talking to the reporter, the Kerrang interviewer on the phone, and he basically says, like, it's all me. I'm the leader of the Black Circle.
Yeah, well, me and Grishnak are co-leaders.
Yeah, because Grishnak went to the press first. And so now Euronymous is trying to play catch up. And he takes credit for so much of it. And so Varg is basically like, I quit your record label.
Yeah. And so they have this like meeting in the train station where Varg comes in with his hood up. And he's been arrested and released at this point
because they couldn't find enough evidence on him.
So even though he spills the beans spectacularly and gets gaffled up by the cops, they don't have anything on him, and so he just gets to walk. And he goes to confront Euronymous about taking credit for everything, and that's where Euronymous has that. The statement you referenced earlier. And I wrote this all down because I thought it was significant. He says, saying things like never sell out fucking sells. Come on, I made all that shit up. Nobody gave a shit about us. I attracted people by saying you can't have this. You're not worthy. It was just promotion. And Varg's like, not for me.
Yeah, he was like, this is my life.
Yeah. I am Count Krishna.
And one of the things that I really think that this movie captured that would have been easy to overlook is that the guy, Varg Vikernes, is an extremist. He wasn't just an extremist when he was young. He still is. The dude doesn't waver.
The extremity just increased, right?
Yeah,
like he just gets more refined as things fall off, like the Satanism falls off. Like that's teenage. Like he's just becoming the guy that records racist YouTube videos now.
He was thrown off YouTube. He doesn't have a channel anymore.
Okay. Well, whatever platform he spouts his nonsense from these days.
He's all on Twitter now, and he has to be really careful about what he says there because they'll kick him off.
They'll kick you off Twitter too. He's got to go on one of the chans.
But he has no audience there. Everyone's on the major platforms, and so he's an attention whore. So, basically,
where do you want to go from there? The Euronymous, after their meeting, he has a talk with his girlfriend. We have a little scene, I think, because she's looking at pictures from the old days, and we flash back to the moments around Dead's suicide, and you get like a really great scene of Rory Culkin crying and his reaction in the moment to discovering Dead's body. And he just makes the decision to kind of cut his losses, and he writes up a contract and to Varg to give all the rights to Burzum's music back to Varg, and a promise to pay back the money, and just trying to tie a bow on this and wrap up this part of their lives.
Yeah, he just wants to make it right. He wants to be rid of Varg and Burzum and just just move forward with his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this conversation with Anne Merritt, and it's really she gives him good life advice, you know, and she's a good stabilizing force there. And I should say that this character of Anne Merritt is not a real person.
I got the impression she's like a composite of like 2 or 3 different people, right?
There was no steady girlfriend that people point to, and that was one of the criticisms of this movie, was that this character was a major person in the movie for Euronymous, but she wasn't a real person. There was no he was never known to have a steady girlfriend in his life.
Right.
And so that was because, I should say, that was one of the things that Varg accuses him of being gay, which in their little social scene is a big bad thing. So that was one of his major complaints about this movie, was that he was unequivocally portrayed as heterosexual, which was, in Varg's opinion, false.
Yeah, I get because Varg is the only person that says that in the
nobody
book.
Else says that.
I just have the opinion that it's part of Varg's justification for the killing.
Sure.
Not spoiler alert. Euronymous is going to get killed here soon.
Euronymous dies at the end.
Yeah, he tells you at the beginning it's going to happen, but I don't
He's
get
the Dumbledore of this movie.
I don't get the impression that that's accurate. It really seems like just Varg kind of making up reasons for why. It was sort of like he calls into question his heritage too, and says he's part Laplander and not a pure Norwegian. And so it's like saying that he was bisexual or homosexual and part Sami and actually, is Sami a slur? Should I not?
I don't think so. When I was at when I was in Norway, they literally called it the Sami Museum.
Okay, so good. It's not like the E word.
Yeah. I think that's okay.
Okay. If it isn't, you can correct me.
Yeah, sorry.
Unintentional. But I feel like those things are Varg trying to make up reasons and justifications for why he was morally okay for doing what he did.
Which is pretty much garbage.
Yes.
So the next scene that I have down here is basically, this is Varg getting ready. He's making the decision to drive from Bergen all the way to Oslo.
Yeah.
6-hour drive.
My notes. Varg the master criminal.
Oh, yeah. He rents a movie.
He rents Die Hard 2 with a vengeance because everyone's seen it. And so they can say they watched it and they'll be able to detail the events of the movie.
Yeah.
He's also, it's not really covered in the movie, but he left a credit card with a friend so that they could make a debit while he is away and credibly place him in Bergen instead of Oslo.
And those are not terrible ideas.
They're not terrible ideas, but you need to have competent accomplices for them to work.
Where it really falls down is the execution. He drives. He's hiding under a blanket in the back of the car, and he's got.
It's a diesel Golf, if you're wondering.
Yeah, that couldn't have been comfortable. And that's Faust driving, right?
No, it's not Faust. It's the other hanger-on. Who resembles Faust very much, but they don't say the kid's name very often. Yeah, he's
just like this loser. He's a friend, but he's really nervous about what they're doing.
He is credited literally as Varg's driver.
Oh my god.
Wilson Gonzalez is the actor. He's named in the book. They say the guy's name. Yeah. Because he ends up being an accessory to murder.
Yeah, he drives him 6 hours to commit a murder and 6 hours home without saying anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And so they finally, they stop at this gas station because they don't have enough fuel to get there. And neither of them has enough cash. And the driver doesn't have any money for gas.
Yeah.
And so Varg has to give him his card to use.
Yeah, which he has to point out Varg is sitting in the car to the gas station attendant.
To verify he's there. Mm-hmm. And it's just, this scene was just buffoonery.
Their alibi is trash already, and losses should have been caught. or cut, and they should have
Oh
gone
yeah,
home.
they should have just turned around and gone back for sure. And then they're making this drive, and it kind of cuts over to what's Euronymous doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Euronymous is like living his best life. He's cuts his hair short. He has his girlfriend cut his hair short.
He has, and I guess this is it's a moment for metalheads when they have long hair and they're sick of it and it's time to move on. But some of their credibility is going to go when they cut their hair, and they know it. So it's a real emotional thing for them.
They just have to drop it. See, I cut my hair when I joined the military just before,
and you've never grown it long.
Never
ever
grown
since.
it long.
Yeah, but he gets his hair cut, which I do pause on that because of the like symbolic significance.
Mm-hmm.
It takes his power away, like Samson, and Delilah cuts Samson's hair. And then Samson's able to be blinded afterwards.
And I don't think this happened in real life. I think this was art school. This is film school move.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no accounts of that happening.
Well, I wondered about that because there's really specific details in this scene.
There are.
He puts on this Tangerine Dream record, the soundtrack to the movie The Park Is Mine, which I take as sort of symbolic of the change in direction towards electronic music.
Yeah,
like that's what it's trying to represent. Which I listened to that record just to get the reference, and did a little digging into that movie. It seems like a pretty interesting, like sort of a Rambo knockoff with Tommy Lee Jones.
Interesting.
Where he's a Vietnam vet that takes over Central Park. And Tangerine Dream does the soundtrack, and it's a very like John Carpenter-esque soundtrack. Like if you've seen Escaped from New York or something like that, it's very much in that vein. Yeah,
and there are a lot of really specific details that were very clearly choices by the director. But basically what happens is that Oystein has cut his hair. He's listening to this record. He seems to be having a good life there in his apartment. And then there's a knock at the door.
And it's a buzzer.
It's a buzzer. And he has to call up.
Yeah, it's one of these apartments where you have to get buzzed in. And this is one of the parts where it becomes a horror movie at this point. Because you're yelling at the TV, Don't him in.
Let him in.
Yeah,
you idiot.
Because the whole thing seems fishy. Because Varg is down there and he says, "It's Varg. I've got the contract. I want this to be over with. You need to sign it. Let me in." And he says, "You drove here in the middle of the night,
all the way from Bergen for this?
In the middle of the night? You could have just mailed it." And he says, "No, I want it to be done. Let me in." And he lets him in like a dummy. And I was just like, oh, don't do it.
Yeah, and it's easy to say in retrospect, but I guess there was a social dynamic because at the end of the letter that he wrote to Varg, he did say, "I hope we can be friends again."
Or we can still be friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe he's playing on that, and then when he lets him in and he gets up to the door, he knocks on the door, Varg says, "Are you going to let me in?"
Yeah, so the Count, that's a Dracula move.
Oh, yeah.
He has to get permission to enter the threshold of the house. And I just thought, like, I was like, oh, man, he's being the Count.
Full-on vampire.
He's a full-on vampire, yeah.
And they kind of have this struggle. I don't need to go beat for beat through a murder scene. But basically, one thing that popped up to me was, like, Varg pulls out a knife.
Mm-hmm.
He pulls a knife on him, and he just sticks him right in the abdomen.
Oof.
And
makes that thunk.
And then he does it, like, a couple more times. And there's some dialogue, right? He's like, "Why are you doing this? You could just leave now. It's fine. It's fine."
Yeah, so Euronymous starts spinning. So Varg stabs him once, and he tries to get the knife from him and gets his hand sliced really bad. And Euronymous goes, "You can just go. We could start a rumor that said you tried to kill me. This will be great." Like, and he immediately goes into record label mode and starts like, how can we use this to sell records?
And one thing that was weird was, like, he stabbed him a lot of times, and while he was still, like, up and talking, and I'm like, I don't think you can actually sustain that much damage and still be up and moving and going.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure about that because Varg sticks him a few times, makes himself a glass of chocolate milk. Another classic villain move.
Oh, yeah.
Villains always drink milk.
I don't think that was real either.
Yeah.
And one thing,
But it seems like such a weird detail. Like it seems too weird to not be real.
it does. I don't really know. But one of the things that is sort of inaccurate about this scene versus reality is that Varg did have some defensive wounds on him. It was more of a fight than this. Euronymous did like take swings and whatnot.
Oh, is that true? I didn't know that. I know that Varg claimed self-defense.
He claimed it was a fight and that he won the fight. And that had he lost the fight, he would have been the dead one.
Yeah. Because that's definitely not how it's portrayed. It's a straight up murder.
Like stabbing. And as Euronymous opens the door and runs away, down the hall, he gets stabbed in the back, which is true. There were a lot of stabs in the back. But they did include the actual... the strange, like, he stabs him in the skull, like, right on the forehead. And that's true. That actually happened.
That's so gruesome. It's not gruesome because it's gruesome when he pulls it out and the blood kind of fountains out of the wound.
And supposedly, according to Varg, he actually had to kick the knife to get it out of his head.
Yeah.
Because it was stuck so
bad. It was lodged in there.
And that was all real. So it made me wonder, like, why fictionalize, first of all, how many stabs while Euronymous is still pleading? And then second of all, why didn't you have Euronymous fight a bit?
It's not fitting in the all talk way they portray Euronymous in the movie. The character of Euronymous in the movie is just a salesman. He's not a man of action.
That's true.
And so if all of a sudden he starts fighting there, I don't think it would match with the way they've been portraying him.
Yeah, so I mean,
but you would think that you're getting stabbed to death, you would react strongly.
You would do something.
Yeah.
So he dies, and then it kind of cuts to a montage of like the good times where they're partying and another voiceover.
Oh, there is the moment, like the moment that crushed me right before he stabs him in the head, when he says, like, why are you doing this? You're my friend. You know me. Like, Euronymous seems like legitimately just baffled how we got here. And the viewer's sort of baffled too, because Varg
has never changed. He's always been that extremist, crazy.
He's a real psycho.
Yeah, he's a psychopath. And so why are you surprised your psychopath friend turned on you?
But I think at least the way they portray it there is even up until the end, Euronymous has the idea that this could all just go away. You know,
that's true.
Like, and it's just that it's all like part of the show. But anyways, you're right. There's a little montage.
There's the partying and there's the voiceover. Like, I don't remember exactly what he said.
I have it all written down if you want it. I've done a few reading lines from the movie.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we get to the camera rests on the cover of the Death Crush EP in a sort of makeshift memorial to Euronymous. And he goes, no, fuck, stop this sentimental shit. Stop. There's nothing to be sad about my death or my life. I'm Euronymous, founder of Mayhem, the most influential black metal band in the world. I had my own record store. I had my own record label. I created a whole new musical genre, true Norwegian black metal, and I created Mayhem. What the fuck have you done lately, poser?
Yeah, I thought that was super lame.
I don't know. The movie starts with a narration like that.
Nobody narrates after they're dead.
No one. Well, the whole movie is narrated after he's dead.
That's why there should have been no narration.
It's just a narrative choice. I mean, it works for me. It's him. he's telling his own mythology. That's just the framing device of the movie.
He was always the spin master. He was always the storyteller. But I guess you just said that works for you. So that actually brings us to our next two little points. What worked for you in this movie? 'Cause I think we're done with chronological.
We are, except for, I mean, the graphics of the end credits are really cool. They're very black metal zine-y,
Sure.
you know, and a lot of cool animation and stuff there.
Yeah.
But you're right. We're through the chronological thing.
That only took us over 2 hours.
Oh,
longer
really?
than the movie. We did it again.
We did it again. Sorry, guys. What worked for me? Rory Culkin.
Okay.
Rory Culkin worked for me big time. Like, I think he's a great actor, and especially him and Jack Kilmer together, and him and Emery Cohen together. Both kind of sets of guys have like great chemistry with each other, and I just loved it. And I love the kids and the scene, like that aspect of it. It all felt very authentic to me, of like how these sort of scenes actually function.
Okay. I think so. For what worked for me is I like the imagery, like the pictures that they took in that were replications of the real ones. The scenes where they were burning things and filming it really artistically, like the churches and whatnot. That was just well done filmmaking. And I do think that they actually humanized these characters and showed how their actions have been mythologized, and it wasn't really like that. And I generally liked that they did indeed capture the major beats of the Mayhem story.
Right.
Even though I think that there were a lot of details that were lost, I feel like they did capture the major beats. And if someone wanted to know what it was all about, this would be worthy of checking out. So what didn't work for you?
I mean, the movie worked pretty well for me overall, so there's not a lot. Things that didn't work would be, I can see how for other people the shifts in tone won't work for them. Like the kind of bouncing between teen comedy and slasher movie, because I think those are where you're at the far ends of the spectrum that the movie covers. That's too jarring for some people, and I think that that's probably a fair criticism. And the other thing, and we kind of touched on this, is that there's all these peripheral characters in the scene that I see there was someone playing Fenriz as I look through here. I couldn't tell you which kid it was.
Yeah, they didn't really have much of a statement.
So it really reduces a lot of these other people to just glorified extras in the movie. And I think it really wasn't so much of a two-man show as they portray it. And I think that is probably a disservice.
Totally agree. So what didn't work for me?
Yeah.
The voiceovers.
Yeah,
Number
I think
one,
we can.
I literally wrote that. I hate the Euronymous voiceovers. I don't just dislike it. I hate it. It really took me out of it. And all of the things that I did like, the things that were what worked for me were sections that didn't have voiceovers. They were imagery. I also didn't. I didn't think that they made the tone of this movie as dark or sinister as it could have been. I would have much rather have seen this reimagined more like a horror movie and less like a docudrama.
Yeah. It's just a straight horror.
Yeah, I hated the clowny moments, like the take off your shoes. Like, you're trying to make fun of Varg. I get it. He's an asshole. I don't like him either. But let's not make our main villain into a joke. I think that actually makes it more of a sad, silly killing at the end rather than a horrific thing. It cheapened the moment by making the villain cheap. And I just think my final note was that this could have been a very grim movie, but it wasn't.
I mean, really?
The potential was
grim
there.
what you mean? Because it is a pretty grim movie.
It was like watching a really good anime, and then the main character's face becomes a chibi and they get embarrassed and like the stupid little sounds and the little motion lines come off their head to show that they're under stress. They basically took something that was cool. It did have good moments, but then they also added in so many moments of lame.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, I guess I see what you see, but it just doesn't read that same way to me. I think a movie like this, if you made it, if you made it into a straight up horror movie and didn't have the human moments and the moments of levity in them, then you really do get into where you're glamorizing what they did and celebrating it, because that's how it is in their head. It is the dark stage directed movie that you would have liked better, and the fact that they are lame-o teenagers is what makes it relatable in any way.
So is it better to cheapen a time and place, or to aggrandize it?
Well,
because
I don't
this
think
certainly cheapened it.
I don't feel like that. I don't feel like it cheapened it.
Yeah, well, I think that I'm more of a black metal fan, and I think this really cheapened it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Euronymous would not have liked this movie.
Well, no, I'm sure well, probably not, except for that he is the star of the movie.
Sure.
But
Varg was the other star, and he hated it.
yeah, but the reason that they hate it is because they're not the mythological figures that they tried to craft their public image.
See, I would have liked this to be more like Dazed and Confused, but for mayhem.
Oh, where they are in control of the entire the entire thing.
Maybe not. Where it's more like a cool introduction to the thing.
Yeah.
But I guess that's sort of getting into the minutia. So let's get your one personal highlight. I'll give my one personal highlight, and then we give our ratings.
My personal highlight, just one.
That's the point of a highlight. Had 2 hours to talk about everything else.
Rory Culkin, it's two scenes, or it's one scene split up. The whole gamut of emotions that he goes through around dead suicide. Both the first time you see it and when you revisit it later, and you get the more honest version of it the second time. No, very little dialogue in that. It's all face acting.
Yeah.
And he just kills it. Like, that is such a well acted set of scenes.
So I agree with you. I liked those scenes. But my personal highlight was, I believe that between the acting and the directing in certain places, they captured Varg's mental state, and that he was an extreme dude. He was an extremist. Mm-hmm. He was literally a domestic terrorist in his country.
Yeah.
He doesn't even live there anymore because he hates the government there, and they captured that. And if you told a person who had never heard of this guy or the scene, and they watched the movie and you just told them afterwards, would you believe that guy was real? And he is he's an author of hate literature, and he is a expat that hates his former country. Do you believe that? They would say, absolutely. Yeah. I really believe that, because they captured it. Cohen's acting was awesome. Mm-hmm. And when the director was setting scenes to show how Varg would calculate how to do things for maximum effect, they were showing a real aspect of his personality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true.
All right. So scale from 1 to 5, where do you rate this?
I'm pretty strong. I'm a 3.75.
Oh man, you really liked it. Better than Dune. I like how you rate movies.
I think, we're always going to say this. I don't think Dune accomplished what it wanted to, and I think this movie did.
But Dune is awesome, and this was not. I give this 2 stars.
2.
It was bad. Multiple times through my watch, I noted in my notes, fuck, this is still going. Or I was looking at my watch, or I was looking at other tabs, other browsers. Or I never took it off, because that's a cop-out for a podcast watch. But if I wasn't watching it for the podcast, I wouldn't have finished it.
Didn't you watch? So you didn't watch it? I thought you watched it twice.
I watched it once, and then I set it to play through because I watched it on Amazon, and Amazon does that thing where you can hover over and click, and it'll show you all the actors who are currently in the scene on the screen. And so I walked through to look at that stuff to see who was who
on the second time.
It wasn't a true.
It wasn't like you watched it once and you're like, "That's so good, I got to watch it again tomorrow."
God, no. I was like, I need to make sure my notes don't suck.
Okay,
because I love the podcast. Hate that movie.
We have our first like major divergence of opinion on a movie.
Okay, I don't hate it. Actually, I think when I wrote a little final thoughts, and I hated it more than I liked it, but by the end, it's all right.
So you would recommend someone watch it?
No.
Okay.
I would recommend that they watch Until the Light Takes Us.
That's a good documentary.
Documentary about black metal. Way better than this.
If we had another 2 hours, we could go through that.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll do Until the Light Takes Us after we've done a few other things. I wouldn't mind doing a punk rock thing because we used to go to so many punk shows and stuff. But this one was near and dear to my heart, this scene, but this movie definitely wasn't.
Okay, we're pretty far apart on that.
All right, well...
You want to take a break and we'll get into our what are you into right now?
Yeah, so that's a wrap on Lords of Chaos.
Welcome back, divers. I think we squeezed all the juice out of that lemon as we could, and so it's time for me to ask Dave, what are you into right now?
All right. Well, I tried to stick with the heavy metal theme a little bit here because I am into all things nerdy and all things metal. I chose to talk about Death Saves. It's a fantasy plus fantasy plus heavy metal inspired streetwear by Joe Manganiello.
Okay.
It's a clothing, and I guess you'd call it a lifestyle brand. They sell all kinds of clothes and stickers and jewelry and patches and things. It's cool.
It's a podcast, though, isn't it? Or
Death Saves?
Yeah,
no, it's not a podcast.
It's not.
It's just a lifestyle brand.
It's just a lifestyle
That's
brand for geeks.
For geeks, yeah. So he licenses, or I should say they, because it's an operation. It's not a one-man show. They license cool art and cool properties. They've done tons of official D&D things. They're very much liked by the D&D people and the D&D community. And like I have a few things. I have, Death Saves patch and a couple of stickers, but I also have a cool framed Death Knight classic fantasy art picture. I have that in my bedroom. They used to do the action figures of the Tim Truman. I believe so.
Yeah.
I will be hanging that in the new house, so you'll see that.
It's kind of like he's got like the winged helmet and the red eyes.
Sitting on a throne, kind of.
Yeah. I probably know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There can't be that many Death Knights.
No, it's a classic one. And then I also have a cool Game of Thrones officially licensed shirt. Where it's got like the grim fire and whatnot. It's really cool. They take D&D images or D&D like terms and stuff, and then they use like heavy metal imagery. Like for example, they have like a shirt that I really want to get called it says Total Party Kill. And then it's got like kind of a fantasy picture, but the script is kind of heavy metal-ish. And of course, as a dungeon master, I'm all about the TPK.
Yeah. You still haven't had one, but
I still haven't had one.
One of these days.
I kill you guys one at a time usually. But basically, I'm going to get the Total Party Kill shirt. Probably. It's got a cool gray skull style castle on it, and of course that hits my Masters of the Universe fandom.
Yeah.
And overall, this is just a really cool streetwear brand that suits my style. I love D&D, I love heavy metal, and I dig it.
Yeah, they go together very well.
Oh yeah, they're common bedfellows, you might say.
Oh, definitely.
So that leads me to ask you, what are you into right now?
So I just finished watching season 2 of The Umbrella Academy on Netflix.
Oh, I haven't got to that yet.
So did you watch season 1?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so those of you divers who haven't watched it, Essentially, there was all these in 1989. There was a bunch of children born inexplicably with superpowers, and this guy named Reginald Hargreaves went around and adopted as many of them as he could, which ended up being like 7, and then he trained them to be child superheroes.
Yeah.
And where the last season ended up, one of the members of the Umbrella Academy, Vanya, who they had played by Ellen Page, who they believed to be mundane and not have superpowers. Actually, the big twist is it gets revealed that she has like the most extreme power.
She's
of
the
all
most super of all.
Yeah, and she ends up essentially accidentally destroying the world, and one of the siblings called Five, played by Aidan Gallagher, he, in a sort of a last-ditch effort to save his family, jumps them back in time, and that's where season 1 ended.
Mm-hmm.
And we join them.
It seems super shark jumpy, I'll say. At the end of season 1, I was like, they kind of blew it all up and didn't put it back together.
Yeah, so they jump back in time to avoid this apocalypse. And time travel, like jumping through time is difficult for Five to do, and he ends up kind of scattering the siblings across the early 60s, like kind of starting as like a spread between 1961 and 1963. And season 2 follows as they kind of regroup with each other, as they find each other, and they've all of them have been in that timeline for different lengths of time and have kind of started living lives there. And I'm not gonna, it's not a deep dive, so I'm not gonna get into spoiling it, but the family they have to come together and deal with this new timeline that they, like a branch timeline they're creating.
So is it good?
Yes, it is really good. They essentially, I guess this is still part of the hook. There's a new apocalypse coming. Ooh. Like basically they've brought the apocalypse back in time with them, and they've got a certain number of days to forestall this apocalypse and return to the original timeline, or at least that's the plan. And it's twists and turns. If you've never watched the Umbrella Academy or read the graphic novel by Gerard Way and Gabriel Ba, it's like Wes Anderson makes the X-Men. It's got a quirky sort of indie film aesthetic with a superhero subject matter, and I really like it. It's probably in a similar vein to Doom Patrol if you're into that, but for my money, Umbrella Academy is better than Doom Patrol.
Well, I haven't checked that out, so I guess I'll stick with Umbrella Academy first. I don't tend to go after superhero stuff, but I liked this. I liked the first season.
Yeah, and so we're trying to be succinct since we got a little long-winded in our mid-segment. So I'm going to ask Dave, you want to give us the call to action?
Yeah. So please subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher and rate us generously. A 5-star review costs you nothing but means everything to us.
You can find us on all social media platforms across the metaverse as Deep Dive the Meta. We're on Twitter, which Dave prefers. We're on Instagram, which I like, but we're also on Pinterest, which nobody likes.
And Tumblr, which nobody's on.
Everyone left Tumblr when the porn went away, but I'm still doing our visual companions there.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.